Middle call. Hey, hey.
Thomas Brady.
I am, what's up, everybody? It's great to see you. We are live on YouTube Sunday evening. I'm Guy. That's John. If you're watching this after the fact on YouTube, that's cool also. You, the consumer, you control time on YouTube. And definitely when it comes to the world, the beautiful wide world of podcasts. If you're listening to our podcast, great to have you there as well. Thank you for your support, as always, everybody. And, yeah, hit that like, hit that subscribe, leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcast. All that stuff's good.
Yeah, share the podcast with your friends. Share the YouTube channel. Do your thing. Happy coming up. When's Hanukkah? A couple weeks or soon?
18th, maybe?
So right around the corner. Haberman's locked in. And enjoy the holidays, everybody. From Thomas Brady to Jimmy Garoppolo to Trey Lance to McCorkle. A lot of connections, right, over the last couple years. All these quarterbacks all led us to this little guy from Perry High School in Arizona that played at Iowa State named Brock Purdy, Guy.
Unbelievable. I got to tell you, John.
I mean, it was a couple years ago. So they signed Thomas Brady. They trade for Trey Lance. Jimmy Garoppolo's erected out of nowhere. McCorkle, that whole conversation. All those guys now are in a weird way all connected. Yet Brock Purdy is the quarterback for the 49ers.
Yeah.
Throwing. At one point, did he just throw 4 touchdowns? It was 2, but when you run for 1, it feels like a lot more, you know?
Threw for 2. Ran
for the 1, so you counted for 3.
Yeah. It was that conversation was a few years ago, but if you check our YouTube channel, you can go watch a video from 3 days ago about whether or not Tom Brady is going to be an option for the 49ers in 2023, which will be a discussion, obviously. I'm worn out from the NFL today. I'm worn out from that game. I'm worn out from all my activities on the internet during that game. A lot of arguing on the internet for me because the game became, irrelevant after halftime, basically. And so I spent my afternoon in my own mentions, tweeting with people about Deebo Samuel.
Elon, be proud, guy.
And how much of it? Yeah, I'm just trying to make Elon. Just trying to make Elon a buck, John. Just trying to build that next spaceship. Doing my part.
Good. I spent Saturday. Obviously Army Navy is a football game, but football it's not quite the same when there's not games. I was had a few too many Tito's espresso martinis. And Saturday didn't do a goddamn thing. So today I was energized. I was buzzing. And I'm excited to be here, Guy. I really am.
Good. As am I. A lot to talk about for a 35-7 game. Before we do any of that, though.
Seattle Seahawks lost, too.
And the Seahawks. I mean, that was a whole other thing. I did not think the Panthers were going to.
You text me the Seattle's going to lose. And then I looked up and they were what? It was like 20-17. I was like, where did this come from?
I text you the Panthers were going to lose.
Yeah, you text me the Panthers were going to lose.
I predicted
and Seattle came storming back.
I did not think that the Panthers would hold on to that thing, but they did.
Sam Darnold.
Niners on Thursday Night Football. Before we get to anything else, John, let's tell the people we are brought to all of you by our friends at Tito's Handmade Vodka. Tito's Handmade Vodka, John. Festive cocktails to shake up the season. So many great options like a Tito's Clementine Cheer, a Tito's Mariposa. I mean, a Tito's Mary Mule. You will not go wrong. Whatever you like. Maybe you like the OG Tito beverage himself, his drink, which was a Tito's water and lemon. I had that the other day when I was at the Adam Sandler show on Tuesday. Very good. Whatever you like, there's something for everybody. Take it to a party. Enjoy it on your own. Do it responsibly. Tito's Handmade Vodka.
Yeah, I mean, I just think you go to a bar this holiday season and you get a Tito's espresso martini. There's just, when it's done right, that thing melts in your mouth, gives you a little pick-me-up. You might be a little tired. It really is a fantastic drink. It's hard to beat. Now, it depends where you go. Some are made better than others, but when you get the right one, not too sweet, but not too, it's just,
3 beans.
This is 3 beans. That's the key. Some people do too many beans. Some people do no beans. 3 beans is key, but that's just it's an elite drink. There's no way around it. Kind of like Brock Purdy, at home against the Bucs.
I went to dinner before the Sandler show, had at the bar, walked up to the bar, first order, Tito's espresso martini, and then the Tito's and water later at the show. And it was a great
I would say also it's the one drink that I don't want to call foo-foo-y, but it's just a drink that it's not Tito soda.
Martini
It's
glass,
just
like the
well
long stem
respected.
glass. You can start with
Yeah,
that, right?
Yeah, you get respect at the bar. And a lot of guys stumbled upon this guy named John on Friday, also sitting at the bar, and he's like, "Get me one too." I said, "Go to." He ended up buying the drink, so it worked out well.
Attaboy. Tito's handmade vodka. It is delicious. We appreciate their support. We know you love it. Keep sending us pictures of you enjoying Tito's. We got a lot of that this weekend. Distilled and bottled in Austin, Texas. 40% alcohol by volume, namely 80 proof, crafted to be savored responsibly. Also brought to you by ButcherBox.com. ButcherBox.com/ham and then code ham. And what do you get, John?
Guy, you get free ground beef. Free ground beef for life. For life. For life. It's hard to beat that, guy. Like you said, butcherbox.com/ham and use the promo code ham to get $10 off your first box and $10 free ground beef for life. You go, you curate a box, chicken, ribs, steaks, you name it. They got it delivered to your house, free shipping. And like I said, you use the code ham after you go butcherbox.com/ham, free ground beef for life. We like giving presents around the holiday season. We want to take care of our people because you guys take care of us. We couldn't do this without you. That's where ButcherBox is trying to take care of you through us, so get it done.
Yeah. Free shipping in the continental U.S. No surprise fees. You can pick a box that they have prepackaged, or you can make your own. Holiday season is made better and tastier with ButcherBox. And you get $10 off your first order when you do the butcherbox.com/ham and use code ham. You get ground beef for life, ground beef in every order for the life of your membership. So there you go.
Can't beat it.
Go get it.
Can't beat it.
Well,
you want to break down Army Navy?
I know what everybody's thinking, John. The Raiders got beat on Thursday night with a quarterback wearing Josh Johnson's number 17. Early in the game, they had a shot of Shanahan on the sideline, and I saw behind him like a 17 standing there. You know how the backup QB stands with like his hands in his neck, like in his pads in the front, just standing there. And I was like, it did not compute for me. I'm like, who is 17? Is that a receiver who is that? And then I just forgot that I'd seen him until he came into the game when the 49ers were up 35-7 in Tom Brady's homecoming.
Guy, my girlfriend looks at me. She goes, "Who's this?" I'm like, "Well, he's the backup quarterback." She's like, "I thought Brock Purdy was the backup quarterback." I'm like, "Well, yeah, he's no longer the backup quarterback. You have to have a backup quarterback." She's like, "But I thought he was really the third string quarterback." I'm like, "Yeah, when you have 7 guys shatter ankles and break knee, it's a trickle down effect, and you got to get a guy for practice squad. It's a complicated transaction here, but it's I would say it's pretty rare to see a guy. One, I mean, he came into the season. It's one thing to be Mr. Relevant, and he talked about it this week. Like, I played the game, but I also was focused on making the team. He had a battle to make the team. But then he made the team. They re-signed Jimmy Garoppolo. Like, he wasn't sniffing the field. I mean, this was a guy in shorts and a T-shirt for the entire season if guys do not get injured, right? He's not, even if Trey Lance gets Wally pipped by, when I say Wally pipped, like bench for Jimmy Garoppolo, like this guy was not going to be playing. So then to come in as the backup and eventually start a game and look and play like that, whether you're playing the Houston Texans or whether you're playing, Tampa Bay and Devin White and Todd Bowles, that was just that was an eye test game where you went like, holy shit, that was really, really impressive, right? Don't need to see the stats. You just watch the game. He's throwing touchdowns. He's running around. He's poised. He's making accurate throws. He's tough. He got peppered. You just go, shit, like that. That is a hat tip for the NFL. No doubt about it. Game ball, no doubt about it. Just a lot of respect from the dudes.
Yeah, especially you and I texted obviously throughout the game, but Brady, first of all, the Niners defense looked really fast. The 49ers as a team looked really fast in this game, offensively and defensively. But their defense looked really fast. And from the first defensive snap of the game, they were getting after Brady. And I thought it affected Brady and the Bucs offense. Well, Purdy got crushed on the first play of the game. And luckily for the Niners, it was a personal foul penalty on Keanu Neal, too.
Crushed.
And you just didn't know, is this a good sign or a bad sign? Because like you texted me, you went glass half full. Hey, he held on to the ball. But what concerned me about it was that what happened was basically what we had talked about a little bit during the week. Eli Manning's kind of warning for what it's like to play the Bucs defense. And we'd seen it in the Bucs game the week before, is that free rushers are a regular thing for this defense. And a free rusher came in, and it was after Greg Olsen pointed out BP13. What does that mean? Nickname?
Well, TB12.
Oh, TB12, BP13. Somebody just put that in the comments. That's good.
I think that's pretty funny.
As Greg, I thought what was interesting about him getting crushed was that Greg Olsen's like, he changed the play, and then he let a free rusher get through and crushed him. And so for him, I thought the bounce back after that play was a pretty good indication. So then on that drive, he hits Deebo in the back of the head. That was a couple plays later. And then he settled down, and that's when he had a great throw to Kittle in the flat. Not that we're doing the Purdy breakdown yet. We'll get to that. But I just thought the Niners defense looked really fast. And I did feel early in the game like I don't know exactly what the Niners offense is going to be, but I thought their defense, it was clear, was like it was going to be hard for them to get outscored given how good their defense looked early.
Well, that offense has been terrible, right? Beside those couple drives at the end of the Saints game, you and I went over the points that they had been scoring in recent games. If you just watch them, they're pretty putrid on offense. They're not an explosive offense. Kind of weird to see Tom yelling at Evans. And Evans, pretty high-level guy, like was just kind of didn't want to try to get into a shouting match with him. But it's like, Tom, your balls are fucking flying all over the place.
Yeah.
Tom, you look a little like Jimmy when he's off. Like, what is going on with you, my man? Like if we just look at it, Tom Brady played a game against Brock Purdy, and one guy was dramatically better. Like, just, it wasn't even close. I mean, Tom was 35 of 55. Honestly, 34. That feels better than what I witnessed. He was, how many of those were the second half dump off plays? I mean, balls over the middle, flying all over the map. To me, Purdy was accurate. To me, he brings an element of athleticism that, they originally had with Trey. I mean, Trey's a better athlete than Purdy, but like he can really move in terms of behind the line of scrimmage. That's not really Jimmy's thing. This guy's pretty good at it. Like I said, Jimmy's not as good of an athlete as this guy. And this guy, to me, plays pretty fast behind the line of scrimmage, just scrambling around, making guys miss. Like, I like that element of what Purdy brings to the table. And he's I guess he's confident throwing on the run.
Yeah.
For a guy without some huge Josh Allen hose.
It's hard to talk about this game without talking about Brock. And we're going to reserve some time here in a second to really get into Brock. Did you see the video, though, that the NFL posted of Brady coming in before he went in the locker room, just arriving at the stadium? He stops and he takes a photo of what in a hallway. It looks like it's a photo of, several
like
Niners.
Jerry, Ronnie Lott, and Joe Montana and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. And Tom has always been right in the moment. There was a video of him hugging Bryant Young before the game on the field, too. I'm not sure if you saw that, but he recognized him, came over and said hi.
You see him say, "You're a fucking beast."
Yeah. I love you, he said. And his dad was there, and there's somebody wrote, I saw on Twitter.
He bought 100 tickets, friends and family.
Had 100 tickets. Somebody said on Twitter today or yesterday that Brock Purdy's family already was planning to come to this game before Brock became the quarterback because everyone was coming to see Brady. Like, this was a huge day, right? I think we talked about it before the season. What would be the hottest ticket on the secondary market preseason? And I thought it was maybe it was the Chargers, and then somehow we found that actually you were right, that it was this Bucs game, like preseason before the Bucs became a sub 500 divisional leader.
We talked about it, I think, like a month, like early on in the season, maybe like early October. And I had a season ticket holder text me and pretty quickly after he heard our conversation is like, bro, I almost got 4.5x for this game for my 4 seats.
Selling it, whatever.
Yeah.
Which in a weird way, if you were a Niner fan of this game, it kind of delivered for you in a very different way than what you anticipated. But there was a lot. I think it's easy after blowouts to forget how much a buildup for some games there is. Like, I think you can watch a college football playoff semifinal. This happens all the time. And there's all this buildup. And then the game, it's a blowout and the game sucks. And this game did not suck because Brock is so, like, I think if Jimmy had just had the game Brock had, it'd even feel a little different. But it's just pretty stunning to see Tom Brady lose by 28 points. And really, I mean, the Niners, well, I guess they scored a touchdown in the second half, but four of the touchdowns came in the first half. Right?
Well, guy, I'm looking right now. Their point differential right now is 120. To put that into perspective, the Eagles, who are 12-1, is 138.
Wow.
The 49ers point differential, I mean, the Cowboys actually pretty good too, 131. Everyone else in the conference, in the South, everyone's in the red. The only team in the positive in the North is the Lions, and they're +2, right? I mean,
That's
Seattle,
with a 19-point loss to the Chiefs, or
yeah,
a 21-point loss to the Chiefs.
and Seattle, who's 7-6 and had a really good season, is +8. So
that's a great call. Here's what we've got: blew out the Seahawks by 20, beat the Rams the first time by 15, beat the Panthers by 22.
Game felt a lot bigger too.
Beat the Rams the second time around 31-14. Beat the Cardinals by 28. Beat the Dolphins 33-17. I mean, you're right. For a team that at times feels like they got blowout win. They have how many? What would you consider a blowout win in the NFL? Like 3 scores, like 17 or more?
Blowout win, I'd say anything over 2 touchdowns. So I'd say 15 and above. Don't you think?
Sometimes a game can get to 15 and it wasn't a blowout necessarily, like when you eyeballed it, But I would say I'd say 17. But you're right.
It also depends. Like you get a late pick 6 or something when it's actually a 10-point game. Here's what I know. I think for the roller coaster ride that has been this season, the overwhelming majority of teams, maybe like this, if you just looked at this season, beside probably the Chiefs and the Bills, maybe the Eagles, but I think it's easy to say that now because they're 12-1. I think most teams just, hey, you can be 9-4, huge point differential, playing your best football headed in December, right? Everyone signs up for that. Like that is just a lock. What you sign up for to go 11-6 or 12-5. But it doesn't feel like that. They have the last couple weeks, but the season doesn't quite feel like where we're at right now with the results. Because obviously we'll get into Deebo a little bit later. Hopefully Kyle said no break, so he's going to be okay. They've had some crazy injuries.
Are you saying hopefully Kyle says that or Kyle said that?
No, he said that. It's not a broken ankle. And obviously he avoided a knee injury, but they have lost guys. I mean, like starting corners, starting quarterbacks, Deebo has missed a game. Kittle's missed time. They do the McCaffrey trade, and then he gets dinged up. Elijah Mitchell's been lost twice. It's been a crazy season. There's no way about it how they got here. Last season was much more nail-biting roller coaster ride till the end. Clearly, this is going to be a softer landing as I think the Fed, that's what they're looking for in the American economy. That's what I think the 49ers have had, a softer landing, especially with Seattle losing today. So now this is not a must-win game Thursday. Now, you can win it. Like, think about this, guy. If I would have told you, would the Niners sign up for a season where they can win the division on December, what day is the 15th, against Seattle, would they have signed up for that? December 15th, they could win the fucking NFC West. Because you win the division, you're guaranteed a home game. Hell yeah, they would have. Don't you think? Would everyone in the organization have signed up for that?
Come on, of course.
Would every team in the NFL in the middle of August sign up for you can win your division on December 15th if you win, a Thursday night game? Do you think?
Well, has anybody clinched a playoff spot yet?
Eagles did today.
Philly has. Yeah.
Philly did today.
So they could be the second team in the league to clinch a playoff spot. I mean, obviously Buffalo and Kansas City are going, but they haven't until you win your division. You haven't clinched a spot, right?
Kansas City's division. They should just give them the fucking t-shirts and hats now. What are we waiting for? Like math. They're the one team. Like the math, I'd give it to them. I guess Miami could win tonight. They're technically still. They play Buffalo again.
Yeah, but
Kansas City's winning the division.
That's what you're saying. They could be the second team in the league to clinch a playoff spot.
Yeah,
which
Philly technically hasn't even won the division yet, right?
It feels like what?
Philly hasn't officially won the division.
No, they've just clinched a playoff spot.
They still play Dallas, but they do, like the Niners, they got that 2-game cushion, which is they're in pretty good shape. Cowboys guy, if the Eagles were to slip up one other game and lose the Cowboys, like the Cowboys got the Jags, the Titans, and the Commanders.
Well, why would
host Philly?
Why would the Eagles even have to slip up? Dallas could just beat them head to head and take the
No, because the Eagles only have one loss. Dallas has 3.
Oh, sorry. I'm looking at, for some reason, I was looking at, yeah, you're right.
But
My
like
bad.
Philly, but
Like
I would say
Shanahan
Philly
running
and the
21 to
Niners.
nothing.
Now, obviously, Philly's going to have the number 1 pick. But that 2-game cushion, when you have 4 games remaining, is wouldn't you agree, pretty fucking wide? That's a big deal. Because you basically have to lose 3, and they only got, it's a major cushion. Unlike baseball, where 2-game lead the final week, if you fuck up, can go away. Football, it's pretty difficult. I mean, the Niners are literally playing Seattle head-to-head. They can lose the game. They're still in first place.
This thought had not crossed my mind before, and I actually don't think it's crazy. Question from Joe on the stream. Why hasn't Kyle gotten any Coach of the Year recognition? Now, as someone who's going to disagree with something Kyle did today, later in the show, I will say this to Joe. If they end up as the 2 seed in the NFC somehow, which is not out of the realm of possibility because they're only a game behind Minnesota right now, and we'll talk about that later, he should get consideration. Now, ultimately, Philly if Philly's the 1 seed, then what's his name will win the thing, I think.
Well, if he goes 15-2, they went 9 games last year. It's a 6-game improvement. Like if Kyle were to win 11 games, it's actually only a 1-game improvement. I know the quarterback situation.
I mean, there's a difference between should you get consideration and should you win. Yeah. It'd be hard to argue if Philly goes 15-2 that he shouldn't win. But yeah, Kyle should absolutely get consideration for Coach of the Year if they keep this thing going.
Sirianni's heavily in the lead, right?
Probably. Nick Sirianni is heavily in the lead, yes.
It'd be like having a 7-shot lead in the Masters heading into Sunday. It's going to be hard for him to blow it.
Yeah,
they're good. I mean,
they're good, and part of it is they get credit. It's kind of a big picture, the Jalen Hurts situation, turning that into a winner and then getting better. It looked good last year, then making it even better this year. But
who says no first? Purdy for Jalen Hurts.
I think the Niners ask if they can put that one off for a couple more weeks, maybe. Are we sure? I mean, Kyle might not do that deal.
Jalen's pretty accurate.
Jalen's good. Yeah.
Jalen's pretty good.
So that's not a crazy thought. I am pro Kyle Shanahan, as I disagreed with him on the internet today with a lot of people. Not with Kyle. Kyle was not on the internet today. But yeah, I think it's a legitimate take by Joe there. I had not considered that possibility because this happened really quick. Kind of like the way that Caleb Williams won the Heisman in the last 2 weeks of the season out of nowhere, Kind of similar. If the Niners finish as the 2 seed in the NFC, it would be Shanahan out of nowhere being a Coach of the Year candidate.
Difference was that I'd say Caleb benefited a lot from a pretty questionable competition in terms of the other, no real, stalwart guys. That
Alabama was not undefeated. Ohio State kind of limped at the end. Yeah.
Michigan's running back was having a good season, but not some historic season. They weren't like Christian McCaffrey's and Tebow's littered throughout. I'd say even if Sirianni went down, well, what if Mike McCarthy won 14 games with Dak missed games?
Yeah. Yeah. But I do think the NFL.
Mike McDaniel took fucking Tua to the playoffs potentially.
Or potentially not. We'll see.
Yeah. Brandon Staley not getting votes.
How about Baltimore, John? Every time you look up, it's God, is Harbaugh on his way out? And then 9-4.
Ugly 9-4, though.
Yeah, but that's what they do. They are a better version of everything the Chargers have ever been, is what the Ravens are under Harbaugh.
Yeah.
They play like the Rivers Herbert Chargers, except they win more games in the end than they lose.
Well, the dude that came in for Huntley today, is that Oregon's quarterback from last year?
Who came in for Huntley today?
Well, Huntley got a concussion. Who's Oregon's quarterback last year? Anthony Richardson? Is that his name?
Brown.
Anthony Brown.
Oh, yeah. He came in today?
Was he Is he on the Ravens?
I don't know. You tell me. Is that who came in today?
Well, Anthony something came in, and I would assume that he was the backup quarterback for the Ravens. So, yeah.
I did not see much of that Ravens game today.
I didn't see a second, but I just saw on social media that Huntley got KO'd. Huntley got a concussion today. So their backup quarterback is
Anthony Brown. Yeah, it's from Oregon.
Anthony Brown, who I thought was a below average college player, is in the. It's crazy how this works out. Really is.
He was 3 of 5 passing and a 16-14 win over Mitchell Trubisky.
Crazy.
There you go. Brock Purdy had his own father crying in the stands today. A performance that was just incredible. You know what I was thinking during the game was what backup quarterbacks normally don't do, or in this case, third string quarterbacks. And I've said this for a long time. I mean, you tell me, you tell us because you scouted these guys. But I think one of the big differentiators between really good quarterbacks and really good starters and everybody else is that the backups generally, it's not so much that they don't do all the spectacular stuff that the starters do. It's not always their arm is a problem. I think by and large, the problem with backups is they don't do the simple things consistently really, really, really well, which is what starters generally do. I think starters get a lot of credit for bigger arms, being more athletic, being higher draft picks or whatever. But I think one of the big separators is the backups just can't consistently make the throws that you have to make and the plays that you have to make to score repeatedly in an NFL game. The games are long, the seasons are long, and the backups don't do the simple things. And I was watching Brock today going, he just makes a lot of the simple things look the way starters make them look, simple. I thought that was going to be my take on Brock today. And then he comes out and does some of the crazy stuff that the good starters do. And I just was blown away by the way he played against the Bucs.
It was an incredible first half. I mean, it really was. I think a lot of times when a backup quarterback gets thrown in a game, he doesn't have much time to think, right? The way Jimmy went down. When a backup quarterback comes into a game based off an injury, there is just all of a sudden you're warming up and you're in the game. Yeah. Right? It's just like get in. It snowballs fast.
Which
and
is what every. Sorry, keep going.
So you never know after that game, like, is that who he is, good or bad? Right? If a guy shits the bed, you're like, well, it's not even a fair situation. Or if a guy's really good, well, they didn't have the scouting report. There is no way around what happened today, right? I would imagine Todd Bowles and those guys, I'd be stunned if they didn't break down several of their best opponents that he played the last couple of years in college to get like a legit scouting report on him as a player. Like they watched Iowa State film this week, the players and the coaches on Brock Purdy. And he still destroyed them. Now, Brock, who many people this week said, I think people are overvaluing like Jimmy's role. And I think last week when Jimmy got hurt, I'm like, oh, there's no way they're going to be a potent in the playoffs. And you start realizing they are not dependent on this guy to be Burrow, Allen, Lamar Jackson. Like they're just not. Like he really just, he hasn't turned the ball over and he's played well on third down. But Jimmy Garoppolo was not explosive in the red zone. And what did they do immediately today? Several red zone touchdowns. Like this guy, how many red zone touchdowns do they have the last couple of weeks? He had a couple last week. He had a couple this week. He obviously ran one in. He brings an element.
50% red zone TD percentage coming into last week and the previous 3, I think is what the number was, something like that.
So then this week, obviously Deebo had the one run, which Purdy doesn't do much, but like he gets credit, like being the starting quarterback for a red zone touchdown. And obviously he runs one in, and I'm forgetting some of my plays now. I guess the Aiyuk one at the end to make it 28-0 was outside of the red zone. But he was good. I mean, he's very poised, yet he is athletic enough to make shit happen. Now, occasionally,
and the McCaffrey was outside of the red zone.
And the McCaffrey was outside the red zone. He does the 360 stuff, but he's not. I think sometimes Jimmy, people think he's afraid to let it rip down the sideline. Like he will throw it over the middle. Brock will too, right? You saw Tom today throw it over the middle. The middle of the field is not Jimmy's problem. He just refuses to kind of let it rip outside the numbers. I would say Brock Purdy is not hesitant to do that at all. Would you agree?
I also think I would agree with that. And I was asking you this beforehand, something that Purdy made me think today about Garoppolo. And I don't know the answer to this. I'd be curious to talk to somebody who's watched a lot of Jimmy's college tape or somebody who was around Jimmy in college. Did they throw the ball down the field in college? Because I think part of it with Garoppolo is he's just not that accurate on those balls that he really cuts loose down the field, and Brock is. And it makes me wonder, did Jimmy do that before he was a pro? Because Brock did, right? Like you could have not a strong arm. I would say Baker's an example of this, right? Baker does not have a great arm, but Baker is comfortable cutting the ball loose downfield. He did it a ton. He's done it a ton in his career, right? I sometimes when Jimmy, whose arm is no worse than Brock's, if not a little better, it's not a thing that he appears to me to be very comfortable or confident doing. And the reason I feel that way is because I don't think he hits the target many times when he does it. Brock, whatever his limitations are, seems to hit the target down the field pretty well. It's something he's done a lot. Like at Iowa State, they did it a ton. He did it for over 12,000 yards in college. So that is one part of that I wonder about.
That's a pretty cool photo.
For those of you listening to the podcast, Matt Burrows tweeted a photo, post-game locker room scene, and it's Kyle sitting in a locker next to Brock, just kind of leaning back, relaxing, talking to him, and Brock just sitting there. And Kyle's asking, would you sign like 5 years, $80 million right now? Or so he's just, I think I saw somebody in the chat say this earlier, checks every box. You can only play as many games as you've played. He's only played one start and one game. And careers are long and seasons are long. And once upon a time, Carson Wentz was almost an MVP, and then he was on his third team in 3 years. So it takes time to really become whatever it is that you're going to become. But I'm with you. Like, I think what you said a second ago, where I interrupted you because I'm so excited to talk about Purdy. Sometimes there's something to be said for what Brock and what Baker did last week. Every athlete's always just trying to get into the zone, right? Where you don't think. You're not thinking, you're just playing. And, I think that's kind of the situation both of them were in Thursday for Baker and Brock last week when he came in for Jimmy. It's different when you have a week to be the guy, when they've got a week to prepare for you, but it's different when you have a week to think about it and prepare for it and cloud your brain with all the things that can cloud your brain. And I that to me is where the value in watching him play against the Bucs was he showed us how he did when there was no time to think. And then he showed us how he did when there was time to think. Now the Bucs run a short week, just like Seattle will be, whatever. You can only take the steps that are in front of you. And right now, especially after you got crushed on the first play of the game.
That's where I think for being a young quarterback, because we talk so much about Trey Lance and his inexperience. And Trey, in a weird way, obviously is an underdog because no schools like Brock Purdy, he could not have gone to Iowa State and started over Brock Purdy, right? He couldn't have beat him out. That just what they didn't even offer him a scholarship. So he wasn't offered to go there. But then when he does go to a school, he only plays the one season. I don't think they put like FCS games on the board, on the gambling board. Like, I don't think you can just bet in the regular season North Dakota State versus Montana. I'm pretty sure.
Oh, you can't?
But if you could, they are the heavy favorite in every game they play. Where Brock Purdy played in a lot of games where, despite he's there, a lot of people are probably saying, is he good enough to be a Big 12 starter? And then he's on a team that's not supposed to be as good as a lot of teams they're playing. But he gets to play in all these games. So even the Trey play, like, only got the one season. This guy got 4 fucking years. 4 years. Of just a lot of game action against a lot of people who made a lot of money. From Matt Rule to Dave Aranda to Lincoln Riley's teams to Mike Gundy's teams. Like, played at a pretty high level of football. And was an underdog the whole time, even though he was having success. And I'm not saying being the underdog, but that mentality, like watching him talk this week, he's just an impressive, like, serious cat who just had to re-believe in himself despite having a lot of success. And then he got drafted in the NFL. Like, ultimately, if you just meet someone who's in his 20s and he goes, I got drafted in the NFL, you would have, even if he wasn't in the NFL anymore, like, holy shit, that's this guy. If you had never met him, you'd be like, where'd you play college football? How many years did you play in the league? Well, that's an incredible accomplishment. But in Purdy's case, it's just like, oh, Mr. Irrelevant. Like, his own draft pick is its own unique thing, and rightfully so. It was literally the last pick in a draft. It was always the thing with baseball, right? Well, Mike Piazza, all these guys that could get drafted, it was like 700 rounds. So we didn't give it. No one ever asked, for the most part, unless you're a super high draft pick, what round you were drafted in baseball, because there's no context to be had.
Wasn't Mike's dad friends with Tommy Lasorda? Wasn't that?
Yeah, it was like, he went to Italian dinners at his house when he was a kid or whatever. But in football, if you met someone, I was drafted in the NFL, your first comment is probably like, what round, right? Or like, there's context when you're drafted.
Yeah.
And then to have to make the team, be a third string quarterback, what happened, the way it happened. And then to me, to make your first start, and like any quarterback worth their salt, they always say, well, it's not me versus Tom Brady. We're never on the field at the same time. but it is Tom fucking Brady's return to the Bay Area. I mean, it's a pretty unique game in the history of Kyle Shanahan era. Tom Brady came to the Bay Area, and Brock Purdy was a starting quarterback.
Yeah. And I mean,
but he doesn't play like this little engine that could, right?
That's one thing I respect. And if you do chip on the shoulder thing and that's your thing, that's fine too. But I think, and I said this the other day, one thing that impresses me about Brock Purdy is that he has the confidence. He just believes in himself. He doesn't do chip on the shoulder. And, Tom Brady's part of his story, right, is chip on the shoulder. Everyone passed me and it drove me, which is however you succeed, you succeed. But I do think with Brock.
I mean, one of the most famous clips is him when he has the long hair talking to Steve Sable. It was when him and his dad, remember, went on a walk in the 5th round. He was like, it was a tough day.
He won championship.
In fairness to him, it was a tough day.
Absolutely. And that's fine. It's just you feel how you feel. But Brock gives off an energy that he just really now Tom believes in himself. It's just a different way. I don't know. I like that about Brock, that it's not chip on the shoulder. Nobody believed in me. Maybe he thinks that. I don't know. But
from a football perspective,
like he plays to prove anybody wrong. He's just playing to play to his ability, whatever.
Well, I just say from a football perspective, a couple things he got going, because clearly he looks small, right? From the eye test, obviously relative to NFL players, but you're just sitting on your couch. He's the smallest guy on the field. He's accurate. He clearly tough, which to me is an important characteristic. Like one thing watching the Jets today, I can see why those guys like Mike White. Guy, he literally got KO'd twice. One time had to go to the bench, comes back. The other time had to go to the locker room, and Tony Romo goes, yeah, I've broken ribs before. That sure as hell looks what that happened there. And he came back in the game both times. And there was just a level of, we don't talk about it enough because like arm strength, size, movement, like toughness. Those guys fucking feed off that shit. Why? Because Trent has to be tough. Kittle has to be tough. Deebo has to be tough. Juszczyk, Mason, obviously McCaffrey. Like toughness is a huge element of football. And when they don't think your quarterback's tough and then you're questionable, you're Zach Wilson, right? They can't stand you. When you're tough and you're making plays, it's just, I would say the nature of the sport, guys just gravitate toward you, right? It's just a natural gravitation toward, like one thing with Tom Brady, in the history of his life, always tough motherfucker and always a playmaker. So, and he was just like this leader, like lead us in the battle, bro.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there were stories this week of like Brock screaming at guys at practice, and guys were like,
Trent Williams quote.
What did Deebo say last week? He's got nuts. He called a timeout without even asking Kyle if he could.
The play he made, so they scored a touchdown on the first drive. Their second drive's terrible. Right? The defender's up, he tries to throw the screen to Kittle, kind of throws it over him. Wasn't a bad pass, it just was not a connection. McCaffrey.
And they got it in midfield because Bowles tried like a 60-yard field goal.
Yeah, which wasn't close. It was short and wide.
What a terrible attempt.
It was really bad.
It was bad.
Even Burkhardt was basically like, oh, well, all right, here we go. We watched him in warm-ups. He barely made this one in warm-ups. He made a 50.
He never even attempted one that long in his career.
Yeah. So that drive was bad. They punt. The play he made, I don't know if you have a favorite Purdy play from the game, but one of them was the Olay play 2 drives later. I thought on the third drive where he kind of stepped up, kind of ad-lib, hits Kittle over the middle for a first down. It was a first down play, and then he hits Kittle over the middle for the first down.
One that was kind of high, or like one in his stomach?
It might have been a little high. That one led to a touchdown. And then the next possession was he rolls out right. Joe Tryon comes charging in. He goes, Olay on him, lets him run by, and then throws a dime to Deebo. I mean, that play to the sideline, it was, I don't know if it was a linebacker. It was over one guy in front of another guy. That was one of the great 49er quarterback plays I've seen in a long time. And Jimmy's made some great ones. I mean, we've talked about Jimmy, but that was the play of the day. Avoid the rush, sidestep, do that thing, then step up and drop a dime in a really tight window to Deebo. It was an incredible throw. Incredible.
His touchdown that got reviewed like 7 times to McCaffrey was pretty incredible dime as well. I mean, hits him right here, over the shoulder, DB below him, can't underthrow it. I mean, that was really the moment of like, holy, because it went 21-0 and it felt like the team they're playing, the route is on. Now, it didn't I don't know if the game I felt was going to end up 35-7, but it felt at worst 27-10. Like this game, honestly, it felt over a 21-0 guy when you factor in their opponent and how anemic their offense is. But also where it felt over is like this guy can keep putting pressure on them to throw the ball. That's something the 49ers all year we've talked about is like, here comes another 17-play drive to end up in a 10-yard field goal. You know, it feels like they can fucking score touchdowns now. Like score touchdowns from inside the red zone and outside the red zone. Throwing the ball. We know they can bust runs. Hopefully Deebo can come back. He can bust runs from everywhere. When McCaffrey looks like that, he can bust runs. Aiyuk and Kittle can, yards after the catch make things happen. But how often have they broke it down a little bit, I think, in the second half, some of the air yards. Like, it just, that's not the 49ers that we have witnessed this season with Jimmy Garoppolo. He brought an element, which feels weird because he's way smaller, of throwing the ball down the field, like pressuring you. What defensive coordinators, I don't know who started this, but everyone's stolen it now. We protect every blade of grass. And when you play explosive quarterbacks, like Herbert's on TV right now, Mahomes, all these guys, Burrow, you kind of do. Because at any moment, like a 25-yard pass across the field, you see the play. Did you see the highlight of the Mahomes like fling to McKinnon?
Oh, my God, yeah.
But it just, you play these guys, they're flinging it, they're throwing it, they're just Allen's throwing dimes. That has just not been the Niners thing. And even Aiyuk today, it's like, is he a threat now to go deeper? Not deep, but like just deeper, which is an element they haven't had. And what did they do? Their fourth touchdown of the day to make it 28-0 came on a double move to Aiyuk, who was wide fucking open at the end zone. The classic, all career long, it's like, oh, Kyle's going to run, go to the locker room. Instead, they hit a big play, and he's like, fuck it. Let it rip, Brock.
Second week in a row he's done that. Second week in a row he's done that with Brock.
It feels like he trusts this guy more than the other two quarterbacks. Not really even arguable right now.
It does feel that
based
way.
on his play calling. Based on his play calling, he trusts him more than the other two guys.
It could be. I mean, I also would wonder, you might be right. I do wonder if some of this stuff gets called. Is just that is the throw that gets made on, like the Aiyuk play got called, just the ball didn't go to Aiyuk. It would go to whatever, McCaffrey in the flat.
Purdy is hurt. But he didn't come out of the game. He's got an oblique injury.
Oh, okay. All right. Brandon Aiyuk has to lead the league in impactful games with 2 catches.
Yeah.
But when one of them's a 32-yard touchdown, I thought getting Kittle involved. He got Kittle involved early. He threw one a little high, but that happens.
I feel like when you get the ball to Kittle early, it's a little like when Deebo has a big play early. It kind of sets the physical tone because he's going to lower his shoulder and make you feel him in the secondary. And the other thing is they're missing their 2 starting safeties. That's just good coaching. Like 85 should cook when you got backup safeties. Like, he'll be thinking like, I'm going to put one of these guys on the sideline when he tried.
Also, it tells you what kind of game it is going to be, because there are plenty of games where Kittle does not touch the football early. And you're like, is George just going to have to block today? And he did. He blocked for Deebo on that. That was actually a pretty cool formation on Deebo's touchdown. But I think it just kind of establishes, like, you guys, I would imagine as a defensive coordinator, if you asked them to rank who they're most concerned about, obviously George is very high, but it doesn't feel like George would be number 1 on their list just because Deebo's probably number 1 on their list. Again, I don't know how you pick. That's the one thing you notice when Deebo gets hurt is like, well, they still got other guys to give the ball to. They still have McCaffrey. They still have Aiyuk. They still have George. Jennings, I don't think got a catch today.
Well, I think Olsen was like, you look in this huddle.
Oh, he did have one.
This was before Deebo got hurt. He's like, they might have 4 of the most unique playmakers in the league. It was like McCaffrey, Kittle, Juszczyk, and Deebo. For their positions, like they can just obviously we've well established Kelsey's the best tight end when it comes to pass catching. I mean, I think he's going to go down as the greatest ever. But there is just an element of George and Juszczyk, like they become a Swiss Army knife because they can do it all. Right? There's just not a fullback in the NFL like Kyle. And obviously Deebo is just one of the most unique players we've ever seen.
Yeah. And
McCaffrey is, clearly one of the best pass-catching running backs of his generation.
Well, the touchdown catch was to have the ball. He had it. It got dislodged. He still kept the toe down and re-caught the football. It was pretty impressive.
It was sweet.
That was a great catch.
He can, and I think Alvin Kamara can kind of do this too. I'm trying to think of other guys. Like, he can just turn into a wide receiver, right? Like, when he's on the outside and playing the ball, he turns into wide receiver skills. Like, some running backs are good wide receivers. Like, you get them, like Austin Eckler. You get him on swing routes. You get him the ball in space. He's natural at it. A lot of running backs, can catch the ball. And then there are other guys that, like, if Christian McCaffrey just had to start at slot receiver for the game, he could have no problem get you 10 for 100 and just run, like, little option routes and just work the middle of the field, like, kind of just turn into Edelman or Welker for a game. He could do it. But he's probably couldn't do it, like, physically. He's built his body up a little bit to take the pounding, right? Those guys, you see some shots of him. He's just a little thicker than, like, Edelman look like.
You could thin him up and just put him out there the whole time if you wanted.
Honestly, not a crazy off-season thought.
Ryan Vogelsong on the stream says what the announcer said was the four most versatile players in one huddle.
True.
So, what I was going to say, though, is just I think that you wondered how it's one thing to make the plays. It's another thing to look like you're completely in control. And I think that's when you hear the quotes from Trent, when you hear the quotes from Aiyuk, Deebo. I think what they're getting at is that Brock is in total control. You can't really tell someone else what to do if you don't have your room in order, right? And clearly, Brock is very confident that he knows what everyone's supposed to be doing on every play, because you don't step in and tell someone else what to do and have it be received properly unless you know what you're doing. And that was the other thing today. I just thought he looked like he knew what was supposed to be happening on every play. He knew where people were supposed to be, and he seemed to make the right decision a lot.
One key, though, is through your preparation, toughness, the respect, the way you go about it. Clearly, he had all that. Then once you play, like, to maintain the respect, you got to make plays. Right? Like, what's the Charles Woodson thing? Work hard, make plays. Part of why making plays is on work hard, make plays, because working hard is what's expected in the NFL. But then once the game starts, like, you got to produce. And that fucking kid produced pretty immediately. It was like, this is kind of crazy. Like, it was universally, everyone pretty much accepted it. I mean, our text messages, I'm sure, were similar from all sorts of people. Obviously, Twitter was going nuts with just, you couldn't watch it going, is this serious? Because we've all seen random backups make a play or two. It's another thing to just have a half where you're just throwing up 28 points. And you're playing a huge role in it. That's another thing, right? The 49ers have a lot of quarterbacks that are like, yeah, you just won that game 24-7, but what did he really do? And a lot of it's been void, or valid. And it's like, not going to pretend like the quarterback, didn't do anything, but probably was on the scale of didn't do anything, or was he Patrick Mahomes? They've had some didn't do much. Today was not that. I mean, the kid was slinging it.
Made plays. Josh Dubow tweets, Nick Bosa on Brock Purdy, quote, "We have a quarterback." I have no idea how to read that quote. I think it means we have a quarterback, but it could just mean we have a quarterback. So yeah, I'll withhold judgment on that quote till we watch the tape.
This is just too funny to hold on. Did you see that Trey Greenlaw took his interception ball at midfield? Fred Warner's like, you got to do it. Convinced him to do it. Went up to Tom Brady and got him to sign it.
And Tom did it.
Yeah. He said he fangirled out on Tom.
Field.
Think about this. One of the Niners star players on the star unit of the team, the defense, goes up to the other quarterback and gets him to sign his interception ball. Like, that's obviously Tom. It's not like you have to, describe who Tom Brady is to some random person. But, like, that kind of encompasses what today was. And that was Brock Purdy's moment against that. Like, most people there were there to see Tom. Obviously, the 49ers win, but, like, a lot of people came to that game in the secondary market to watch Thomas Brady play a game against the 49ers, and Brock Purdy came out the star.
If the Niners win that game like 35-31, do you think Tom is willing to a blowout? Everyone the game's been over for a minute. Tom's probably already processed it. It's a little easier, maybe, as opposed to.
I think Tom's kind of hit the Tiger Woods part of his career where he's pretty cool in most of these situations. I don't think I've seen any situation where Tom has blown off like other players.
Nick Foles.
Super Bowl, though.
Twice. Regular season.
When was the second time?
I think Foles beat him again later, didn't he?
I don't remember.
I think Foles has beaten him post Super Bowl. Although now that I say that, I'm trying to figure out how it would have happened. Like the Jag.
I give you a pass. Super Bowl loss.
Eddie says, did Tom shake Purdy's hand after the game? Yes, he did. And then he embraced Trent Williams afterwards. I saw that video.
You're right. Easier when you've had a quarter to just kind of soak it all in.
A quarter? John, the game got taken off of Fox. You're sitting there. You texted me. Middlecoff texted me. He's like, what's going on with the Niner game? I'm like, what are you talking about? I just came back from commercial. You're like, well, I'm watching Seahawks-Panthers right now.
I mean, it was 35-0 with 8 minutes left. 35. They were up 35-0, guy. 35-0.
Foles and the Bears beat Tom his first year in Tampa. I don't think Tom shook his hand after that game.
I think that was a Thursday night game too. Guy, the second half after being up 28-0, Tom throws a pick. McCaffrey scores. They're up 35-0. Then Tom throws another pick where Greenlaw tipped it to himself. So it's like if you're a Fox exec, you just go, this is, from a Niners perspective, it was cool. By that time, it was even starting to get boring. The Bucs were a tough watch.
Yeah.
Do they want to preserve Tom's credibility for their booth?
Yeah.
He had gone back-to-back picks, and they yanked the game.
That was the America's Game of the Week, and they were like, America deserves better. Which I don't.
Seattle,
you almost never see that. Like, you'll see it late. You never see it halfway through the third quarter.
Do you think they did it because that's their employee?
No.
I don't know. That's weird. That's really early, guy. Seattle, Carolina. What were they really playing for?
The game was close. It was 35-0 in the Niner game.
True.
If that game's like what I was thinking was if that game's 35-14, they may not do it. But it was so far gone.
Why stop taking notes on a second INT?
I mean, McCaffrey was still getting carries, but
you want to get into that?
Let's talk about Deebo Samuel, John. We'll start this conversation Sunday night with this from Matt Barrows. Here's his tweet up on the screen. Kyle Shanahan said Deebo Samuel suffered a left ankle sprain, said it's quote unquote most likely a high ankle sprain. That is great news.
But they're bad. I mean, that can knock you out for a month. Like that could be his regular season.
Could be. But I would say if you asked me to bet, does Deebo come back and play at 65%? I would say yes. Not necessarily this week, but at some point, I think it's more likely than not, even if that's the injury, that Deebo returns for this team. Would you agree with that?
I do think the high ankles. Remember, Mike Williams had a bad one, came back, fell on it one time, and then boom, missed a couple more games. It's really sensitive. I'm no doctor, just Cal Poly, Fresno State guy. I think doctors say sometimes they can be worse than a break. Now, we got to see the severity of it.
Right. Because it can be a tear.
You would always take a high ankle sprain, again, not a doctor, over an ACL. I know that. So I think when he was gone, they immediately announced knee, and he's on the cart crying. I was pretty somber there for like 10 minutes, just thinking like, this sucks. I mean, he's going to miss. It wasn't just that his season's over with an ACL, but it's like, that's a long for a guy, bigger guy. That's just a tough.
It put me in a fuck, I'll be honest.
Deebo, a big rehab guy for 8 months. Like that's just, I started doing the math. I'm like, I don't love where this is headed for the next 8 months.
You thought like 2024 will be the year when he looks good again?
Well, I just thought, it's just a monotonous thing. You got some time on you can eat, it's just.
Yeah.
Kyle was furious. I don't even know who he was screaming at. He was pissed.
Himself. When you go cart off the field and then it turns out high ankle sprain, that's a win. Right.
Yeah. They clearly utilize the front of the cart.
And like you said to me, you texted me, you're like, no air cast is a good sign. He didn't immediately get ruled like out within 30 seconds. That's a good sign. So those things are all things considered.
Bad sign is when you get bent back and it's a human reaction, whether you're holding a pebble, whether you're holding a football, whether you're holding your baby and your knee gets snapped, every human, you just go like this, right? Every player does it. So I'd
forgotten. It's a good point. When they came back from commercial break, I'd forgotten that he'd fumbled the ball. For a split second, I'm like, why do the Bucs have the football? I was so consumed with Deebo just got hurt. Fundamentally, I love watching Deebo Samuel play football. And Deebo Samuel plays a kind of football that most people just don't play at a level where everybody plays hard, at a level where the 1%ers play extra hard. Deebo Samuel is a 1%er of a 1%er. It's why he's received the rare award of being in the War Daddy category, right? He is a War Daddy, as you like to say. And after he got hurt, somebody tweeted at me and you, because they knew what I was thinking. I started making notes for the podcast already, and they said, is Kyle Shanahan partly to blame for this? They didn't say, is it all Kyle's fault? And my answer was yes. And the reason I said yes and think that is because I've said for a long time that the way that Kyle describes Deebo's touches when he's talked about it is different than the way I think about Deebo's touches. I don't think all of Deebo's touches are created equal. And I think it's beneficial to the 49ers to create as many of his touches outside of traffic as possible. You put him in front of 6 guys instead of 11 guys. Deebo's always going to take on all 11 guys. That's just fundamentally how he plays. And I think it's situational with him. I saw Akash, whose takes often appear in our chat here, and who I got respect for a lot of his good takes. And this is a fine take. Like, I think you can absolutely disagree with me, and I'm not calling anybody an idiot. But he said if you complained about Deebo's running play up 21-0, then you should also complain about his touchdown carry. Or if you didn't complain about his touchdown carry, you can't complain about that play that got him hurt. And I disagree because the touchdown came, it was 0-0. The play got hurt on, they were dominating. It was 21-0. And I would equate it to a reliever who gets a lot of work. If your reliever, your closer gets a lot of work, you don't bring him into games 5-0 in the 9th. You don't run him up the middle, 2nd down and 9, up 21-0 at midfield. Now, if that play had been 3rd down and 1, I wouldn't have had a problem with it. If the score had been 7-0, I wouldn't have had a problem with it. But I do think you can make an effort to pick and choose where you use Deebo, who has been beat up in his career, has been beat up this year, and who seeks contact and tries to make, physical plays physical. So all Kyle's fault? No, of course not. I'm not saying that. Not at all. But I have advocated for a long time to just kind of manage where and when you give Deebo the ball. And I don't view tossing him the ball on like a sweep play in a 0-0 game the same as giving him the ball when it's 21-0. I would rather hand the ball to Buck Mason there. Like, he's a running back. I would like to limit how much you use Deebo as a running back. And the reason I would limit how much you would use Deebo as a running back is because running backs get tackled in tighter windows than receivers generally do. Now, it's not always the case for Deebo, because Deebo will take a screen and cut that thing into the middle of the field and try to run through 11 guys. So I acknowledge, like, this is an imperfect, inexact situation. It's football. People get hurt playing football. But I've said for a long time, it's not hindsight. If you're new here, I've said this a lot. I would manage how and when you use those. I would just be a little more judicious with how and when you use those situations where you put Deebo in traffic. And 21-0 would not be the time that wouldn't have been the time I would have done.
To me, 21-0, though, the problem with that guy is still the first half. There's the NFL, you're playing Tom Brady, who just led a crazy comeback.
Yep.
I think the other problem with kind of your premise of the whole deal is Deebo's a wide back. He's not a wide receiver. He's a wide back. When he said that last year, it's aged perfectly, right? He does not play wide receiver. Brandon Aiyuk plays wide receiver. This guy gets all of his action in a certain way. He does not catch the ball down the field. He's useless in the red zone, non-running the ball. Like, his position is uniquely equipped to this individual. And like, I understand, try to pick and choose the up the middle or just, around the tackle boxes in runs.
Because I don't even think that play was designed to go up the middle. Deebo cut it back.
The problem with that is, though, he plays basically Christian McCaffrey's position. He just lines up in different spots. You don't worry about when Christian McCaffrey runs up the middle. Like, I think there's an element of football at any moment you can get injured, right? You can get bent over. And I think when you play that game, it's very, very hard to do. And it's why I thought the Trey Lance critics, which, maybe they were more than on Twitter. It's like, guys, like, it's where he runs. I mean, watch Josh Allen. Like, if he can't do that, I don't know what the fuck he's going to do. And Jerry Rice freaked out. It's like Jimmy Garoppolo got broke his foot running away from guys where he should have just hit the ground.
Yeah.
Right. So all the injuries in a weird way are a little different. Like Deebo's position, he's getting carries every game, inside and outside the tackle box. Now, to me, I looked at when it got late in the game, and when I say late in the game, like 35-7, I was like, I would yank 71, 87, not 87, 90, 97, 85. Like these guys would not play. Trent Williams would come out the game.
44.
11. They would come out the game. But that's, you would say historically, football doesn't really operate like that. And Kyle is not alone. It's not, we've always talked about in the NFL, it's not like college football where you got a lot of replacements. He might go, well, or actually our backup tackle's kind of banged up too, and Trent's feeling good. It's just, he told me he can kind of go half-ass, and we think he'll be fine. Like, it's hard, right? Okay, you pull, Aiyuk never goes back in. It's like, well, we only got 3 other receivers now that Deebo's injured, right? So it's a little more complicated than we make it out to be, but I have no problem with calling football plays for football players that run those plays. Because I think then we pick and choose when guys specifically get injured. I have no problem late in games and blowouts when that happens. And Kyle has fucking clearly done that. But today with that play, I don't blame Kyle Shanahan at all. To me, there's a freak element of just the sport and physical players that just find themselves in situations. Because for every time like Deebo has got bent over, remember the Packer playoff game where the dude crushed him? And it's like, oh my God, is he alive? We thought his like shoulder was messed up. Yeah. He's found a way out of that and ended up in the end zone. Like that's part of his brilliance and his dominance. And honestly, let's face it, part of the reason they gave him all that money, he ain't A.J. Brown and DK Metcalf, who again have receiving touchdowns a day, right? He does not play the sport like them. Yet to the Niners, he's like equally as dominant for what they need as those guys are to their teams. And Seattle, you remove DK. Obviously with Philly, you remove AJ, they'd be fucked. You remove Deebo, they're not necessarily fucked because they have more reinforcements, but he's a huge reason if they are going to be prominent in the playoffs. If he would have torn his ACL, let's say, worst case scenario that we all thought, I started thinking like even with Brock Purdy playing like this, it's going to get a lot more difficult winning playoff games. Did that cross your mind? Like removing him the rest of the season is a problem.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's part of why I was so pissed. And this is where I everything you said there is logically, I think because
you're not alone. Like part of the reason for
I think more people agree
coming up is
based on.
But part of the reason this conversation, like it's just kind of out there in the ether. Like Kyle's put this situation because this player, and maybe a little bit with Trey Lance, but Trey Lance has nothing in common with. And I'm not trying to be mean to Trey Lance, but Deebo's an elite NFL player. Like Trey Lance might suck. Hope he doesn't, but who knows, right? And he got injured doing the few plays that he could function at. Deebo Samuel can do more stuff, but there are things that he can't do that most people, quote unquote, at his position can. So he just gets the ball a lot behind the line of scrimmage, and a lot of times behind the line of scrimmage end up in more physical tackles.
So
even on those screen plays, guy, aren't they a physical thing where he catches it and hits it right away?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, generally, that play has 4 people tackling you, not everybody tackling you. You're not trying to run through everybody. But, every time Deebo gets the ball in a crowd, it's a risk. Anytime anybody gets the ball anywhere on a football field, it's a risk. I agree with that. This is just football. But I think when Deebo gets the ball in situations like this, you are putting, you could argue, your most important player in a risky situation. I hold my breath every time Deebo gets the ball in that spot. Sometimes, actually more often than not, he makes a great play, and he certainly scores a touchdown more than he gets hurt. He doesn't get hurt that much.
Scored one today
in a 0-0 game on an outside toss.
Then when the toss first happened, it felt like, oh, this is going to be 6-7 yards, right?
Well, I felt good about Kittle out there in front. It was to me, that play was a different way to get the ball to Deebo. I don't know that we've seen.
I'm not arguing that. That's the outside runs and the pitches where he's headed toward the sideline are less physical than the toss up the field.
To me, it'd be similar to.
Part of it is the defensive lineman, when they hold on to you usually don't get out, where sometimes he can break DB's tackles, right? Like a defensive tackle grabs onto him, and I'm not sure exactly who grabbed him. He is more likely to be held up straight and then guys hitting him on between the tackles.
And I also think the type of run, like this is where partly it happens. McCaffrey takes the ball, runs. Somebody tweeted me like, why is McCaffrey's touchdown run different than Deebo's run? Well, fundamentally, just the run is different. The way McCaffrey hit that hole in a straight line with momentum, the tackle, even if he gets hit, 2 yards past line of scrimmage is going to be different than what Deebo did. Was he took that play left, plants, tries to cut it back against the grain. He's got very minimal forward momentum. I think you're at greater risk to get stood up and bent backwards than if it was just a straight kind of downhill run. It was not the play that Deebo got hurt on was not a downhill run from him because he cut it back. But I think every time he gets the ball in those spots, it's a little bit of a risk. You are using a pitch. And the question is, do you have to use that pitch right here? My preference, and this is not me reacting that Deebo got hurt today. I've said this for a long time. I would be more careful with when I use those plays for Deebo than Kyle Shanahan is. Now, maybe you're right and Kyle's right. Hey, I have to either call this game the way I would call any game, regardless of the score. I have to treat Tom Brady at 21-0 like it's 7-0, or I don't give the ball to Deebo. Those are my only two options. There's no in between. I can't drive this car at 60 miles an hour. It only works if you drive at 100 or you just decide we're going to park the thing and we're not going to drive it at all. That's a legitimate take. My opinion is at 21-0 on 2nd down and 9 at midfield, I go into the whole thing kind of thinking like the way if you play video games and you get the turbo boost, I would not just hit turbo every time Deebo gets the ball because Deebo's going to hit turbo. I would be more careful about when and where he gets the ball. Now, maybe the point is you just can't play a football game that way. That's always been my take on Deebo, though. And to me, 21-0 in that spot, I'd give the ball to Buck Mason there. Give the ball to McCaffrey there. Whatever. But that's specifically in that situation, when you know how important he is to your team and you're trying to get away with this one. Look, Shanahan's coached a lot of games just trying to get by with Jimmy. So let's not act like he's got to call every game 100 miles an hour or nothing, because that's not how he's called the game with Garoppolo.
Well, he's calling the game now with Purdy like that.
Yeah, but like he's called games like let me mitigate damage and manage this thing to the finish line.
What if you say, hey, motherfuckers, that's not who I am. This is me. I'm Matt Ryan, Atlanta Falcons up 28-3, going for the jugular.
That guy's back. But he has called games at 65 miles an hour before with Jimmy. He's done it all the time.
He's like, I don't want to play like Jamie Moyer, bro. I want to play like Syndergaard and DeGrom. That's how I want to fucking throw.
So, and again, I want to reiterate.
I also think you got to factor in if Elijah Mitchell was in this and they got two legit running backs, it would be like, what are you doing? But Deebo's their second best running back. Now, we could argue like, Kyle, look at like the way football works. He's an undrafted free agent. He runs like just play Mason, like utilize him. You don't have to just keep Deebo on the outside and just keep him on the edges. Now, if you wanted to make that argument, which I will make, like I think that's a fair argument. Like, why doesn't Mason get more reps in the flow of the game just to give McCaffrey a breather and not have to force Deebo? And I think it's just simple. It's clear they don't trust him at the level in the tight games. The last couple of weeks, they just don't. Like, it's just through their actions. They're not putting him out there where the game's in the balance. And then he comes in and listen, I don't know how much to judge his 11 carries for almost 60 yards. And it just looked like, Jesus Christ, he's obviously fresh. But to me, his running style, a lot like Deebo, he's seeking contact, getting downhill. Kyle, just play that guy. And now they're kind of going to be forced to, right? If Deebo misses, let's just say misses the next 3 games. I'll just pick a number. He's going to have to, because you can't give McCaffrey all the carries. He's going to get first half carries, right?
Yeah.
Mike Mason is. And you could have argued like it was kind of felt like you could do that today. Now I think Kyle would be like, well, Deebo was already rolling. He already had several carries. He'd already had, catches that were equivalent of carries because they were the quick screens. He was being very productive. I mean, he was on pace for easily a 100-yard game. Who knows? Maybe he gets another touchdown in the game. Like, he's one of our best players, one of our highest paid players, and he's rolling. I get him the ball. This is what we do. We get 19 the ball.
I understand. And if he had broken that thing for a touchdown, we wouldn't be having this conversation. But I know
or just got a normal tackle and hit the ground.
Yeah, but again, I would still feel the same way had that play occurred. In that I hold my breath every time you put him in that spot, because he does. It's not as if Deebo's never gotten bent backwards or never been banged up or hasn't been banged up this year. It just, to me, is always a risk, which is part of the sport. You take a lot of risks. I view it as an unnecessary one.
Well, his style, let's just compare him and McCaffrey as running backs. Deebo has a little like Barry Sanders in him in the sense of I can keep this thing alive, but in a physical manner. Like, he's got like Barry Sanders, like I can make this guy miss to then run this guy over with like Zeke. right? Because he's like, I can keep plays alive, but I can run through a guy. Where McCaffrey, having not been super locked in on the last couple of years, has got a little Frank Gore to him. Like, I'm not trying to set the world on fire every single run, like at the end of the run, right? Like, as the guy's taking me down, like, if I'm not going to break this tackle, I'll go down. Now, in the open field, if I can stiff arm a guy like he did on the touchdown run, but McCaffrey's not looking to, like, I'm going to break your helmet chin strap on this play, where Deebo and Kittle have that. And Kittle in the open field, no big deal, because a lot of times he's catching the ball over the middle. He's got a little space and he can kind of load up. Deebo is doing a lot of this. Like, sometimes even on the screens, you're like, he disappears for a second. There's just so many bodies around. He just plays with fire a lot in the plays that he runs, which ultimately are the successful plays that he has. I just think it's kind of a catch-22 with him. With the good eventually come the bad. He's just, I just think it's what makes him so unique. I saw AJ Brown tweet, because clearly they're all kind of three tied together, AJ, DK, and Deebo, like this ruins my night. Like, obviously he had a sweet day, he scores another touchdown, and he sees, I watch AJ Brown, he's catching all of his shit down the sideline, right? He's just, his harm's
One
way.
or two people can tackle you in that situation.
Yeah, and I would say that every time that he's on the outside, that DB is smaller than him.
Yeah,
most of the guys that tackle Deebo are bigger than him. Linebackers and defensive linemen for sure.
If you are watching this video and you agree with John, subscribe to the channel. If you agree with me, like the video. Let me get a couple comments here. Tom,
like
criticizing a let me just read this one real quick and then make your point. Criticizing a coach for using his players to their best ability in the second quarter is farcical. Good word. Go ahead. Sorry.
Do you think Jerry's going to lose his privileges, or he just got a little cocky there with his Instagram post?
Jerry Rice. Yeah, was he not sitting in the first row, pushing goat juice? I'm surprised he had a hand free.
Well, the real goat's there. Can you push goat juice when Brady shows up?
That's true. It's hard to push goat juice when Tom's there. That's a very good point. No, somebody said to me, like, you're just you. Correct me if I'm wrong, or my guess is it's different when you're being paid millions of dollars to make these decisions versus just having this take on a podcast. And I'm like, yeah, well, if I was my take was, if I was Kyle Shanahan, if I was one of Kyle Shanahan's assistants, I would say that in the meeting. I think we should be careful. I think we should pick and choose our spots about Deebo, but I'm not. So the only place I can do it is on Twitter and on my podcast. So
it sounds like you got into a war zone though.
I got into a war zone. It's fine. Like, more people agree with you than agree with me on this topic, which is fine. The reason I feel confident in sharing my take, even though I fundamentally agree with a lot of what you said and what a lot of people are countering, like, it's hard to manage a football game. It's just football and people get hurt playing football. I fundamentally agree with that. The reason I'm so confident in sharing my take in this one is because I've said for a long time that I think that I disagree a little bit with Kyle about Deebo's touches and that, I think they should be careful about how often they use. I think there's a limited number of bullets in the gun with Deebo as a running back. And I would be a little more careful than I think they are with it. But, Kyle might say, if he were here, I am careful with Deebo's touches. Like, if it were up to me, if you told me Deebo will never get hurt, I'd run him 17 times a game. But I'm careful about it. He might say that.
Well, if they hadn't done the McCaffrey trade, Deebo's usage last month would have been way higher, correct? Especially once Elijah got hurt.
Yeah.
It would have been skyrocketed.
Yeah.
Now, we're going to have to see more Jordan Mason, which I think he's deserved more time. And I've been around these coaches, and some guys are more likely, you and I talked about it before we hopped on, pull up a Chiefs box score this year. And beside Kelsey, it could be any number of cast of characters. For a lot of coaches, they just ride their guys. And sometimes, like, they have a young guy, and it's like, well, just give him some more burn. And that's where, when you read these stories throughout the year and when you see blow-ups, the front office and the coaching staff aren't on the same page. Because a lot of times the front office, like, use this guy. It's not like the front office, and I'm not saying they are, but Jordan Mason, to me, has shown more than enough in the last several games of speed, explosion, his style with this offense. Give him some fucking burn when it matters. Not just to like get him to succeed, to give these guys a breather and to take their pounding off. But they just will not play him when the game's like the true pounding's happening, right? Because in the second half, clearly the Bucs kind of, I'm not even counting it quitting, but the game it's like, what are they doing this for?
Actually, he had a season and career high 11 carries today.
Well, I know. Well, he played a shitload because the game
Yeah.
was over. And he got. But like, what if he would have got 15 carries and 5 of those would have been mixed throughout in the second quarter, instead of like when he wasn't going to run it, Deebo was becoming the running back because Mason was not in the game. They don't play him. And it's back-to-back weeks. I would guess that's going to change this week, assuming, I think it's fair to assume Deebo's not playing Thursday. Is that a fair assumption to make?
Yeah. And
I'm under that.
A win would be pretty huge Thursday if you can wrap up the division and then not worry about Deebo until the postseason, right? Although, you kind of want that 2 seed. That's a whole other thing. But just to at least have a floor established for what your team is.
I would imagine they don't practice the next 3 days. Like they're not going to, walk through stuff. You see how many guys they lose today? Every other play toward the end, guys were limping off.
Givens got
Kerry
hurt.
Hyder.
Yeah.
They have lost a lot of defensive linemen. You can.
Jimmy Ward.
The problem is
back, but
the Niners have signed a lot of like random McGills and random guys to fill in. There are only so many 320-pound bodies on the open market now in December that you can. Maybe you have to sign guys up for practice squad. Yeah, he might be ready. Can he give a couple snaps?
He's on the open market.
He's more, those offensive linemen, though, they know the plays. I need guys that react. They don't know what's happening. It's a little different.
How many games in a row has McCaffrey ended up bleeding now? He was bleeding again. McCaffrey bleed. I think he's got the same cut that just bleeds every game on his left arm.
I'll say this for him. When he's good, he's sweet. His games for the Niners have either been like, that's kind of a weird McCaffrey game, or is this white LT? Today he was. I love a good touchdown run where, the safety's in the open field, you cut it left or right, and he's fucked. And then this guy has an angle on you behind you. He's probably a little faster than you, but when you give him like a stiff arm, it doesn't throw him to the ground, but it somehow gives you a turbo boost, and then you gain a little yardage, and then you bust the run. I love that moment in the tackle when he's coming. And honestly, the guy should just dive at your legs and trip you. Instead, he kind of goes high, and you kind of shove, and you get like an extra 2 yards of space, and then you just walk into the end zone.
I'm just going.
He looked faster today than he had the last couple of weeks.
He looked great. So you got McCaffrey for a 23-yard run, a 13-yard run, another 13-yard run, a 27-yard touchdown, a 4-yard run. That was part of what was cool about the touchdown run for him, is that he had a big run earlier that I thought was going to be a touchdown and got tripped up. Not caught, just he got kind of hit. And I thought, he might stay on his feet and score early in the game, that first run that he had. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
But I'm with you. Immediately it looked like, this is really good McCaffrey today.
What was his touchdown pass?
You're asking how long was the reception?
Yeah.
27. He only had 2 catches in the game.
One huge advantage he has is when they work him down the sideline, and now this has happened several times, a cornerback is not on him. So his advantage, and this is, I think, what Olsen meant, you just get such a huge advantage. How many linebackers, think how many guys, when you play throughout the season as a linebacker in the NFL right now, and the game's so much spread out, you're not used to having a fullback come on you, right? You're used to kind of navigating offensive linemen coming to the second level. And then you just have to learn about the running back. What's his style? Is he kind of hit me? Is he trying to get angles? You're not used to, forever. Our guy, Lorenzo Neal, he was one of the best fullbacks, but every team had a fullback. So part of in practice when we were in high school to when I was at Fresno State is there were drills, linebackers versus fullbacks taking on, shedding. Think how you could go a month in the NFL and not even sniff a fullback. And play a lot of teams that even their tight end's not a blocker. So you're basically beside the offensive lineman. You don't have to worry about. You just have to worry about if they put you in bad positions. But you're not. Juszczyk is coming at you, so you're kind of approaching. I wonder if that's a huge point of difference for the Niners of just even good linebackers aren't used to kind of shedding Kittle and Juszczyk, because most tight ends in the NFL can't block, and definitely there's just fullbacks don't exist. That's got to be a huge pitch of just makes guys a little uncomfortable that you're just not used to, because they get to those second creases quick.
Yeah. I saw, you just made me think, a Derrick Henry highlight today.
They got their ass kicked, didn't they?
They did. But he had a big run early in the game, like up the right sideline. And I was like, well, just watching the play, like, is he going to step out of, what's he going to do here? This run, there's 3 guys around him. This run's about to end. Is he going to step out of bounds or is he going to take on 3 guys? Now, what do you think Derrick Henry did?
I think he went out of bounds.
He did not. He just took on 3 guys and he went down about where he would have gone out of bounds. And I started thinking, like, because my first reaction was like,
did he like, was it a huge impact? Like, was it a collision?
I mean, no, but weird things happen when 3 guys are tackling you. You are putting yourself at risk unnecessarily. It wasn't a big collision, in terms of NFL collisions. And my first reaction was like, Derek, what are you doing? Just run out of bounds. But I do wonder if part of it is
he is 6'3", 250.
Yeah, well, it's that. Part of it's that. But if you always run out of bounds, then the guys that are coming to tackle you, I would think, are just a little more sure of themselves as they approach you, right? Like they can run harder at you if they're confident that you're not going to hit them, that you're just going to try and get away from them. When there is the threat of me hitting you, you don't come at me as hard. It's kind of a little reverse psychology. It's like a little counter.
Isn't that a Deebo thing?
It's a Deebo thing too. And so I wonder if, like, psychologically he's like, well, actually, if they always know I'm just going to try and get away from them, then they can run harder at me and hit me harder. If they think I'm coming at them, they have to kind of approach in kind of a defensive way, and I don't get hit. It kind of puts them at maybe a little bit of a disadvantage. I don't know, but that's definitely the same thing you're describing. It's just when you're going to fight for that extra yard, in some ways I have to approach you differently as a tackler than when I am confident that I can take you out.
Well, I mean, a huge reason, obviously he's talented and he's smart and he's, excellent player. But like the reason Frank Gore played for 75 seasons was because he did not take a lot of unneeded shots. And honestly, when shots could have been had, he avoided them. Hit the ground a lot. He played a lot like Peyton Manning and Tom Brady played quarterback. And look at those guys' career. Like the 3 of them, how long do they combine for? Right? Because there is an element. Listen, it's a bravado, tough, physical sport. You got to be confident, cocky, fucking crazy a little bit. But I would say a lot of the great players historically who have not missed a lot of games use their head a lot more than they didn't, right? It's an IQ game. It's a thinking man's game, despite the physicality of it. And one thing I've noticed with McCaffrey, he's a pretty smart player, obviously like skilled wise, but he is not trying to act like he's Deebo Samuel on contact, right? And I don't blame Deebo and Kittle, because a huge point of their success has been made off that physicality. So it's hard. It's always the balancing game of like, I don't really want Kittle to change. Like that's kind of who he is, And honestly, Deebo, like that's kind of what's going to make him special, right? McCaffrey's a little more skilled, for his position, that like, he's not going to play like Zeke. There were a couple times today I looked up the Cowboys game-winning drive against the Texans, 17-point favorite. They basically got to the 1-yard line. What did they do? Fucking Zeke ran through the entire line. It was just like, you just give it to that guy. That's just kind of his point of difference now. He's not fast like Tony Pollard or whatever, but it's going to be very, very difficult to tackle that guy in a one-on-one situation. And his career is going to be shorter lived than a lot of guys with his talent. But there'll be a lot of people historically that played in his era be like, I'll never forget tackling that motherfucker.
Yeah.
I think you're better off, like, whose career is going to be longer? Brandon Aiyuk or Deebo Samuel? Right? Like, Brandon Ayuk's probably playing, if he's all health, nothing crazy happens, like 15 years in the NFL.
Yeah, you would think.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's that 10-year mark's going to probably be tough for Deebo Samuel. And that's whether Kyle Shanahan was coaching him. You'd have to agree, like, regardless who's coaching him, like, his style of play is not, like, typically the ones that last forever. Honestly, it's crazy that Derrick Henry's has gone this long, guy.
It is. There's always some outliers, but it is. I mean,
Adrian Peterson went for a long time. He's bigger. Now, he's a running back. I think that's the argument with Deebo. It's like, well, isn't he a wide receiver? Well, kind of.
I think any conversation with Deebo about, well, you want him to play, it's just a waste of breath to talk about wanting him to play differently, right? Now, I don't know. At some point, does he just slide at the end of some runs? Maybe, but then he takes 2-yard plays and makes them 8. I thought that was kind of McCaffrey's game a little bit before watching him as much as we've watched him now. And it's really not as much Christian's game, right? taking a 2-yard run and making it 5 because you just fight. I mean, Christian runs hard and he fights. You know what I'm saying? Like I actually,
No, it's not.
but I kind of thought it was. Did you?
Yeah, I mean, he was really, really. I think he was just a little faster and more. He was just a kind of a different player. I think this is going into. I got to play more with my brains than just all my physical attributes are always going to be better. I feel like we're watching a guy who's kind of come into his own mentally because of probably the things he's gone through. Now, he's watched a lot of football on the sideline. Like, ultimately, Deebo, he hasn't really had that much time to just think on the sideline in a boot or a cast or a shoulder, right? He missed a game here and a game there, but, like, he's played a lot, his style. So I think sometimes when you've been injured, it probably makes you contemplate. And in a weird way, Christian got, like, handed this second lease on life from a football perspective to go to the Niners, right? Leaves this shitty team who's actually sneaky, not dead for the division. I'm being serious. Carolina can still win the division.
Christian is now, well, I guess he's played 7 games now with the Niners. I was going to do he played 6 with Carolina. Now he's played 7 with the Niners, do a little comp. But what do you have today? 14 carries?
Yeah. 119.
Still, he had 85 carries with the Panthers in 6 games. He has 14? 89 carries through 7 games with the Niners. He had, how about this little nug? Coming into the game, he had the same number of catches through 6 games with the Niners as he had with the Panthers through 6 games, 33. At almost an identical yards per reception, 8.4 with the Panthers, 8.5 with the Niners.
Well, I mean,
so he's kind of the same player,
Purdy versus
team.
Purdy versus Baker Mayfield and Jimmy.
What do you mean?
Looks like he's just upgraded quarterbacks.
Oh, he's about to be. You say McCaffrey's about to be better?
For sure.
Somebody on the chat said, "Oh, this was a good one from Dejan. I definitely thought Middlecoff was going to have the other stance. That has to be about being mad at Kyle."
I'm just, every time I look down, I see Herbert making sweet plays and Tua making shitty plays. Almost like you put if you're a good quarterback and you get receivers around you, you're going to excel.
Waddle drop. Yeah, I can't believe that was a conversation.
Well, it really wasn't. There's one idiot that doesn't shut up about it.
As I like to say, 8 billion people on the earth. Jay Campbell on the stream says, "Where is the Greenlaw love? 15 tackles and a pick." You know, that's the guy they re-signed. Was it before the season or at the very beginning of the season?
I think it was like maybe that week stretch before week 1. Might have been 2 weeks before. I'm almost 100% positive it was definitely before week 1. Early in camp. Feels like a little later in camp for sure. I would say late September. If I had to guess, September 27th is when it was announced.
We don't guess enough dates on the show, you know? It's a good guess. Drake Greenlaw, 10 solo tackles and 5 assist tackles. What
would your guess be on date?
I'm going to go with you said September 27th? Is that what you said?
September 27th, yep.
Yeah, I'm going to go with August 30th.
We can almost close to meet in the middle. September 19th.
You were closer.
September 19th? Yeah, so they had already played a game.
They
announced a guy. They announced a guy after they beat Seattle. So much shit has happened. I remember that now. It's like,
to be clear, after Trey shattered his ankle, not they beat Seattle.
Yeah.
After Jimmy beat Seattle in the Jimmy celebration.
How about that deal? Just little 2-year cheap extension. What would that guy get on the open market? He'd get some cash. Yeah. $10 million a year.
What's the season?
Probably not quite as much as him, but I bet if Greenlaw would have had this season and they, let's say, don't franchise tag him and hit the open market, I would say 4 for 40 with like 28 guaranteed or something. 10 a year. I don't know what the highest paid linebackers. It's kind of like tight ends, sneaky underpaid. Part of like when you watch a sweet tight end or you watch a sweet middle linebacker, like, are we disputing the value of these guys? He makes every tackle. He's tipping balls. Him and Warner are everywhere. It's like, because like Howie Roseman, the Eagles, they're not a big believer in drafting or paying middle linebackers a lot. And if you always have shitty ones and you get by and you have successful franchise without them, I kind of get it. But once you have one sweet one, you'd be like, I need Bowman, I need Willis, I need Fred Warner, I need Luke Kuechly, I need Ray Lewis. Like, look at the Ravens. They have Ray Lewis. Boom. What'd they do this year? Trade for what's his name? Roquan Smith. Because they're like, we just need that guy. The Steelers always value those like up the middle players.
Yeah.
Some franchise like, oh, safety, fuck those guys. I'm watching the Niners safeties make plays all the time. Like, I value those two positions, I think, more than some. The analytical community is not a huge believer in like drafting high and definitely paying middle linebackers. But it's like, where would the Niners be without 57 and 54?
I know you're not going to convince John Lynch, right? Like,
or Kyle.
Well, definitely Kyle. But I mean, John Lynch played it. Like, he knows what Derek Brooks meant to him. He knows. And then interior, no one's arguing about Warren Saps of the world, I guess. But
I mean, I'm not saying the Niners are lucky because they drafted these two guys. But I mean, one guy, I think Greenlaw was the 5th. Obviously, Fred was the 3rd. I mean, if the league didn't realize how good these two players are, or they're not getting, I mean, they are dramatically. I mean, if you redo Fred Warner, what's Fred Warner getting drafted in the top 15 of his draft?
Yeah. I think
like top 15.
I think I saw Fred Warner. I saw on Twitter, so I'm not sure who tweeted. Fred Warner had a quote today like, you need to talk about Dre Greenlaw the way you talk about me. It's a good quote. Good way to say it. Like, basically, like, all the stuff you guys say about me, you should be saying about Dre Greenlaw.
Well, he's an elite open field tackler. That pick was sweet.
Well, if he wasn't signed by them, he'd be playing for D'Amico next year. We lost John's mic. No, I think can I unmute you here?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, but you're coming through like your computer or something. Maybe you hit a cord. Stand by. Good buddy. While John is tending to that,
I might have to sign off and sign back on.
All right, you go ahead and do that. And that means that I won the Deebo argument. That's just about that. Trice, John Lynch should get more credit for building this defense. They looked fantastic today. I think we got to go back here on since the shutout to the Saints going into the Dolphins game. Actually, this is a good thing to talk about right now. They gave up 40 points in the 4 games after they played the Chiefs, right? Rams, Chargers, Cardinals, Saints, 40 points total, shut out the Saints. That was 4 fewer points than they allowed to Kansas City, 44 in the game that they lost. And I said going to that Miami game, this is the number 6 offense in the league. This team is much closer to the Kansas City Chiefs offensively than the Rams, Chargers, Cardinals, or Saints. And basically, like, do it in this game and you'll prove something. Well, they held them to 17, which is pretty damn good. So this is a run now of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 11 games. Now they've played in, that's not right. It's not 11. Held an opponent under 20 points. They've played in 12. Falcons scored over 20. Chiefs scored over 20. Yeah, that's correct. So 2 people have scored more than 20 points on the 49ers. That's pretty crazy. I'm just triple checking to make sure I have that right. No, not any better.
What do you mean?
You're still coming through if you're coming through the mic, then something's maybe mess with the cord a little bit. Sounds funky.
Sound normal now?
Nah, there you go. Now you got it. I was just saying, John, while you were gone, we went to that Miami game like, all right, you held the last 4 teams to not a lot of points, but those offenses aren't good. But then they held Miami to 17. They held Tampa to 7 today. So they've only allowed 20 points to the Chiefs. They allowed 28 to the Falcons. Remember, they lost to the Bears. The Bears scored 19. They lost to the Broncos with 11. And nobody they've beaten has scored 20 points in a Niners win. So they've allowed more than 20 points twice this year.
Today was a onslaught ass kicking of Thomas in that offense, who's had a rough season, but that's what you're up 35-0 in an NFL game in the third quarter. Like, I'm sorry, you're getting your fucking ass kicked in. And Tom was it's not like Tom, Peyton, and any of the big quarterbacks like getting hit, but he clearly wants no part of getting peppered. And right now, Wirfs was out. Their offensive line, Donovan Smith is probably one of the worst starting left tackles in the league. He's started for a long time. They were kicking. I mean, they were just all over him, just shoving guys into him. He looked really uncomfortable. And I think a lot of people that have watched him say that are of like, are we sure, Tom? He has looked uncomfortable this year. And he could, if he was on the 49ers or any other team, the Raiders, he can't move away from pressure. Most teams do not have 4 Trent Williams or 5 Trent Williams, right? So you are minimum going to have a couple guys that you would love to replace. And it is football. Those people also get injured. So you're playing with, I do think there was a report this morning. Did you see like Rap Sheet kind of threw it out there?
Everything's on the table is what Rap Sheet said.
You watch games like this and you just wonder, like, if there are people in Tom's life, like, Tom, you got nothing left to prove. You're 45 years old. Getting hit sucks. Whoever he signed with.
He got hit a lot today.
He's been hit a lot all season. I mean, they've been missing.
At one point.
Did you? Someone put the meme up like, is Alshire about to get suspended for the next 3 years? Because the just still photo of him giving like, if you told me Alshire gets suspended like on Thursday, I wouldn't even. You never.
I was
know.
like, what is Tom? Tom does talk to the referee a lot. I was like, what is he complaining about? And then you see the replay, like, oh yeah.
I would say this year he's screaming more than ever. Screaming it now. When's he ever lost this many games in a season? Well, honestly, when's the last time he had 7 losses? I don't think he ever has he? Maybe his second year in the NFL. I think the Patriots missed the playoffs.
Do they not have a 9-7 year?
They did, yeah. And they missed the playoffs. His second year starting. So they win the Super Bowl, 9-7, then back-to-back Super Bowls. But even in the years when they weren't winning Super Bowls, they won the division for 15 straight years. And then he gets to Tampa. People forget, like, they hosted the Rams last year in the second round. Right?
The Rams had to come back on them.
Yeah, they hosted the Rams. They hosted the Eagles. They didn't win 8 games last year. Tom is not used to losing like they're losing. He is a very, very spoiled. Now, he's earned, like, he created that.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like he's spoiled just because he got handed wins. Like, he's the reason his team's won, him and Bill. And obviously with Tampa, he clearly is a major reason. But he does not handle losing very well. Now, you could go the Vince Lombardi quote, like, show me a guy that's okay with losing. Show me a guy that's not a sore loser. I'll show you a loser or whatever. I mean, Tom's clearly got some of that, but in fairness to him, what would his experience be losing a lot? It's like Phillip Rivers, like, fuck, I went through some tough times. Had a lot of seasons we missed the playoffs. You just it's the NFL. It's hard. You hear a lot of quarterbacks when they retire, like, I remember that 3-year stretch, when we won 7 games a year. I didn't know if we'd ever get back to just a playoff game. Like, Tom doesn't talk like that. Every single season Tom has had for basically, I would say starting like with the Randy Moss teams, it was like Super Bowl or bust from like 2007 on. Super Bowl or bust. And honestly, maybe it even started before that. Like once they won back-to-back, like he never went into a season without thinking like, I'm going to win the Super Bowl. Like legitimately thought that and was completely devastated when he lost. Because he just had in his mind all season long, like, we're going to the Super Bowl. And then we're going to win it. Like how many play, like Aaron Rodgers doesn't start every season like that. How could he? He's been a fucking one. I'm not saying he's not trying to get there, but like Tom legitimately, more than Peyton, more than Rodgers, maybe Mahomes, but even Mahomes like has missed it a couple times.
Yeah, I mean, the question is, does it make him want to play more or less? Does he think I cannot go out like this? Or does he think part of the reason we are in this position is because I'm not as good? Or does he think I just need to get myself on a better team and then the things I do will be more valuable, right? Like Christian McCaffrey, having kind of the same exact season he had for the Panthers for the Niners, just doing it on a much better team. And I wonder if Tom views it that way. Like, put me behind a real offensive line and a receiver I don't have to yell at. And maybe a real head coach. Maybe he doesn't think I don't know. And then everything that I'm doing right now that you think I look too old to be doing won't look too old. I'll get the ball out quicker. I'll get it to McCaffrey. I'll get it to Aiyuk. I'll get it to Deebo. I'll get it to Kittle. I got Trent Williams over here. McGlinchey's on my front side, so I see what's going on over there, and we'll be good.
Here's the thing. When he had the season, because that's fair to say, And those are conversations you're going to have in these meetings at the end of the season, that all these teams that are going to go through the exercise, right? Beside like 8 teams, they won't even entertain it, right? We already know the Cincinnati's, the Buffaloes, the KC's, the Chargers, the probably Philly. But we just had this conversation, guys, 4 years ago. And most people universally were like, it's probably over. Like, Bill's not alone here, right? He was 42. Now he's going to be 46. Like, okay, I burned once. You can burn me again on this one. I think a lot of people are going to feel more comfortably like, I'm not going to fuck around with this. And I think 49er people that just witness that,
Well,
I think it's harder when you had a front row seat. You're right, because if he was getting peppered in New England like that, most quarterbacks are going to look. I thought he looked really, really terrible. And I thought he looked really, really terrible last week, beside the last 2 drives. He looks old. The balls are flying places, I think, for the first time in his career this season. And maybe it's because of maybe it's just simply age. Maybe it's just simply, who knows? There's probably a million variables. His focus, balls are not going the same spot where he's used to going.
So I felt that way as last year in New England too.
Like when he snapped at Mike Evans, it's like, Tom, Mike was just sitting there waiting for the ball and it fucking flew over his head.
Trice says Brady didn't yell at Mike when he underthrew him in the end zone.
Mike, Tom, you're not throwing to a 5'8" guy here. I mean, Mike Evans is like 6'4". He's enormous.
They did hit a home run touchdown that got called back.
Pretty ticky-tack holding, I thought.
Yeah, Niners got the benefit of some penalty calls. I think your point about having just played him is good. It's the same reason that I don't think – I could be wrong because there's just not going to be that much options out there. But if Stafford isn't back, part of the reason to me that I've said that I don't think McVay would be interested in Garoppolo is because McVay, even though he's been beaten by him many times, is not afraid of him. I think McVay, part of what pisses McVay off is he feels like he should beat the Niners a lot, and he doesn't. But again, he may just not have options, and Jimmy would be a good option for him if he doesn't have Stafford. Jimmy might be his best option, depending on money.
I saw Greg Rosenthal said that you got basically like, how are the Raiders? Their owner wanted him the last time. Now he's got Josh McDaniels. You can flip Derek. And I'm just not sure that Kyle Shanahan, the Niners, would, one, tie up a lot of money. Even if Tom gives him a discount, okay, $25 million for just a 1-year deal. That is a lot of money to put on your books, right?
Yeah.
And obviously, I'm not saying historically you're going to take Purdy over Tom. Obviously, it sounds crazy, but I might short the 46-year-old. And I quoted Greg Rosenthal, and I said, I not only think that the Raiders are going to be aggressive, I think the owner's going to mandate it to those guys. Like, you guys go get
Tom
this guy.
part or the Derek part or both?
Tom. I mean, the whole thing. Go get Tom, bring him to Vegas. And I don't think the offense.
He doesn't tell
Tom
the
Brady,
GM that, John. He tells Dana.
He tells them all. I think if Tom Brady, I could see him play for Vegas next year. I don't necessarily think. One, I don't think he makes sense in Kyle's offense. I mean, one stable play of this offense is that natural boot. It's a staple play of the offense, which is literally the guy's baby. I mean, the offense is the head coach's baby. The team is, and the mindset is, but a huge mindset for his team is the running game, and then our passing game is based off that, but our quarterback doesn't need to be like Lamar Jackson, but he has to be able to move. Tom can't move. He never really could, but he cannot do those plays, right?
Yeah.
It's just not something that he's going to have in the bag.
Yeah.
Matt Ryan was probably on the high end of like, this is pushing it a little bit.
Yeah.
I do not think Tom Brady is going to be on the 49ers. And I thought that before we witnessed this today.
Brock out plan.
Not even that. Listen, you missed. You should have done it last time. You didn't. We all can have regrets. We've all made decisions we regret. I wish I would have bought $10,000 of Bitcoin in 2012.
But then you would have had to also sell it,
Yeah, and who knows? Maybe I would have been greedy. I'd have been like, oh, this thing's going to $200,000. I'm worth $700 million. But you missed. Sometimes you miss, and you just got to take it, and you don't try to double down on a miss. And that's what I think this feels like. And I think Tom Brady's one of the great athletes I've ever seen. I respect the shit out of everything he stands for and his work ethic and his desire and how much I'm a betting man. I'm betting against him being on the 49ers next year. Honestly, you watch days like today and the majority of last week, I don't think it's a lock he plays next year. I wouldn't bet against him not playing because he's kind of crazy, but like
I know
I do think the Raiders make a lot of sense, guy.
We've gone back and forth on it, and I've said, last week when we talked about him in the Niners, but a lot of great careers end looking like this season kind of looks for the Bucs.
When you say they all, I mean 90% of them.
Almost all, yeah. I mean, some guys walk away, after a championship or something. But yeah, I mean, actually, I'd say a lot of them end even worse. Like the Bucs, for as bad as it is, are around 500.
Well, if I say Tom Brady's on the Raiders next year, what's your first reaction?
Yeah.
Is it like wow, or is it like I can see that?
I can see that. Feels like a weird fit from just like what the organization is. Like, would Tom go play for the Tuck Rule team? Like, but Josh is there. But from a franchise standpoint, he did go to the Bucs, which is not exactly a storied franchise, and he went and played for them, right?
I read
he'd be like, so you're gonna poo-poo me going to play with Devontae? You think that's stupid?
Maybe Rap Sheet wrote this in his article, but it was like he's a big fan of the Glazer family. I think that I read that somewhere in a paragraph today about the Tom. I was like, is that just because they're super rich and he just like they take him to cool stuff?
I was watching some of the World Cup coverage on Saturday morning, and Ronaldo interviewed Harry Kane, and he was like, "You're a big Tom Brady fan, huh?" He's like, "Yeah, I watched Tom versus Time, and it really inspired me, and I had a chance to meet Tom. He met Tom when Tom was on that soccer trip last year." And Ronaldo was like, you found out something. What did Tom tell you? And he's like, I was like, Tom, congrats on your retirement. And Tom said to me, well, I don't know if I'm exactly retired. Harry Kane. That guy knew. Tom told that guy he was coming back. So
some of those guys on the soccer team had some good secrets, huh?
Yeah. All right, John, big picture NFL playoff stuff. The 49ers, we'll have more time to talk about it this week and kind of break it down. But the Niners are now 9-4. Seattle is 7-6. At this moment in time, Seattle's actually not in the playoffs. The Giants at 7-5-1 are ahead of them with the for the final spot. So we have the Giants and football team both at 7-5-1 playing each other. Washington is the 6th seed. Giants are the 7th seed right now. Seattle is the 8th. And the Niners play them on Thursday Night Football with a chance to secure the division if they beat them head-to-head.
So if the Niners beat Seattle, the loser of that game would still be ahead of Seattle, right? Because Seattle would be 7-7, but they'd only be 7-6-1. Correct?
The loser of the Giants football team game would be ahead of Seattle, right?
So it would probably just stay the same. The winner of that game would be at the 6th seed, and the loser would be at the 7th seed if Seattle loses. Seattle has to win to keep their playoffs hope alive. I think it's fair to say Seattle's playoff hopes are in major trouble if they lose this week.
Yeah,
they're leaking oil as it goes. I mean, they barely beat the Rams.
The thing they have going for them is like it's Washington and New York. New York has a -2 point differential. Washington has a 0. Seattle has a 0.
So they're all about the same.
The Vikings point differential. The Vikings are 10-3. Do you know what their point differential is?
Well, I saw earlier it's 8.
No, it's -1.
Oh, it's someone's 8. That's kind of good.
-1 is the Vikings point differential. They're 10-3. How do they have a -1 point differential?
Well, how many teams that are 10-2 playing the Lions, who were 5-7, are getting 2 points? People are like, well, we don't think the Vegas didn't. The statistic people were hammering the Lions, and the Lions covered. Lions, sneaky, not dead guy, 6-7. A massive playoff game for both teams this week. Jets, Lions, count me interested.
Wow.
That is, if I would have told you.
Jets right now 7-6, the 7th seed in the AFC.
Kind of like the Lions.
Count me interested.
Don't love Goff. It looked, obviously Buffalo feels like it's a little colder a lot of times than Jersey. But I would guess that game at Meadowlands is not going to be warm and fuzzy.
It was not wet today, too, for that game. Yeah. But don't love Mike White either.
I think the Lions are playing great. Jameson Williams had a touchdown. Honestly, if you told me,
bro, just for people, if you didn't watch it, you got to go see the throw.
If I had to rank the teams I wanted to play, Giants, football team, Seattle, Lions, Lions would be the number one team I would not want to play out of that group.
Giants would be the team you would want to play.
And potentially Seattle, too, though the two wide receivers can make – Lockett had a sweet touchdown today, drag his feet, DK. Those two guys can just, at any moment, like 2 touchdowns each.
Yeah. I'm pro Mike White. Let's not act like, he's the answer for the Jets.
No, but their defense is good. Seattle losing, I mean, to have a 2-game lead going into this is pretty crazy.
Yeah, it would be.
Man, even though it's not crazy, like when you look at the landscape, but just like what it's become so fast.
Should we talk about this now or later in the week, the Minnesota aspect of this?
We'll probably talk about it later in the week.
Okay. Just something to keep in mind as we get ready for the week. The 2 seed is on the table for the Niners. If the Niners win on Thursday, they are 10-4. Minnesota is 10-3. Minnesota this week plays the Colts at home, so not great if you want them to lose, but who knows? Minnesota is 10-3. Niners would be 10-4. Niners would be 8-2 in the conference. Minnesota is 6-3 in the conference, and playing the Colts doesn't help them. But they finish with 3 NFC games: Giants at home, at Packers, at Bears.
You feel good about the Eagles in the number 1 seed?
Yeah, I do feel pretty good about the Eagles number 1 seed. Who do they play?
They play the Cowboys again on the road.
Okay, so they could be, let's just go worst case for them, 12-2.
I think they play the Giants one more game.
Okay.
I don't know how to schedule it. Maybe the Jags.
I can tell you here in 1 second.
Bears. Jeff Wilson Jr. just got hurt. Carted off. Looks like a quad or something.
Seriously?
Yeah, calf or something.
That, if you were going to counter my point that you shouldn't have traded him, it's like, well, you guarantee yourself nothing. So Eagles go at Bears this week, at Cowboys, Saints at home, and then finish with the Giants.
So I would say worst case 2-2.
Worst case, they're 14-3, right?
And they've already beat Minnesota. They're in pretty good shape.
Can the Niners get to?
But the difference is like the 2 seed used to matter a lot. Doesn't matter as much as it once did, right? Yeah. Without the bye. I think you could argue it just.
Well, to me, where it matters, you just avoid going to Philly as long as possible, right? Yeah. But I guess you kind of, as a 3 seed, you wouldn't be going to Philly anyway.
I think a lot of people, my guess is going to be a lot of people pick against Minnesota in the round 1 game, depending on their opponent. Like if it was 2-7 Lions, I could see a lot of people taking the Lions. I could even see if the Commanders played like eye test decent football, like 10-7. If it was like Commanders plus 4 or 5, a lot of people hammering that. I don't think Minnesota is going to be some team people are, because most of the analytical community, I thought they were all-time frauds. A lot of people just like all their statistics. Was it you one saying this week the 1-score games, if you flipped them, they would be awful? And
Niners would have had the same record in 1-score games.
And the Broncos would be like, they have the Eagles record?
Broncos would be good, yeah.
Well, again, what did they have today? They had a 1-score game. They lost by 6 points.
John, how about the good news for the Niners? How about the Panthers with Sam Darnold completing 58% of his passes? The Panthers still ran for 5 yards a carry today against the Seattle Seahawks defense.
Yeah, Seattle's defense struggling.
For Steve Wilkes. Maybe just give Steve Wilkes the job.
If you had to do immediate reaction, Deebo out. I mean, do you feel good about like the Niners winning on a short week after that? They have a lot of injuries.
Yeah, I mean, I feel okay about it given that I think Seattle is closer to who we saw today than the team that was, raced out to first place in the NFC West.
And granted, the Niners played them week 2 and kicked the shit out of them.
I think the pressure they get on Geno will obviously be a big deal. He's not Brady in terms of a statue, but I feel okay about it. Now, like I think one thing we'll talk about later in the week is this is a new challenge for Brock Purdy this week. Going to Seattle in what's kind of a must-win game for the Seahawks.
Yeah. And it's going to be, even though they lost states, it'll be a good environment. It'll be loud.
Bengals sneaky 9-4. We don't spend much time on the Bengals here. We're not going to do that now, but sneaky 9-4 for Zach Brown band. Chiefs, that game got close. 34-28. Did you see Brett Rippon's interception?
No.
So they get Broncos get the ball down 6. They they get the ball down 6, and Brett Rippon gets crushed as he's like throwing the football, and it goes Texas Leaguer pop-up, can of corn, intercepted, and kind of that was that. Just as I kind of got into the game. Russell got knocked with a concussion, which you sent me the video. It looked pretty violent. But, you know, I haven't watched it, so I'll defer to someone who watched. Russ was 247 yards, 3 touchdowns, a pick today. But I just saw the pick he threw look pretty bad. He tried to do the Olay.
I would guess he hasn't thrown 3 touchdowns in a game this year for them, right? I mean, that feels like a pretty confident guess.
Yeah. Well, there you go. They lost another. What would be their record? 1-score games, which, you know, you can't do it for them. You can't do it for Scott Frost. But remember, Scott Frost would be like, won the division if he flipped all his 1-score games.
Scott Frost also got fired, it felt like, 3 different times when he was with Nebraska.
So 1-score loss following a 1-score loss last week to the Ravens. They got beat by 13 the week before. The week before that, 1-score loss to the Raiders. But the week before that, 1-score loss to the Titans. The week before that, 1-score win over the Jags. Week before that, 1-score loss to the Jets. Week before that, 1-score loss to the Chargers. I'm at 6 1-score losses now. Week before that, 1-score loss to the Colts. Now we're at 7. Week before that, 9-point loss to the Raiders, not 1 score. A couple of 1-score wins the week before that. And the week before that, a 1-score loss to the Seahawks. So 8 1-score losses for Denver now this year.
That's pretty wild.
Bro, that's incredible.
Did you see him, the coach, today? He had the goatee going. He looks like.
You think he tried to mix it up?
I just think he's going. He had the shades on, a little goatee, kind of like mine. Doesn't totally connect right here. Just looks like a guy that's like, fuck, you know, kind of going through a midlife season crisis where you know you're gonna get fired. Like, what do? You know, you're like, do I mix up my look? So these pictures that are gonna live in infamy in this one. Everyone acknowledges like Denver, Colorado is just a great city in America. I'm going to be known for having a job for 12 months. Everyone's going to make fun of my name the rest of my life here. Like, that kind of sucks. Yeah, I'm sure he's a good guy. UC Davis guy. We're rooting for him. Those thoughts have to cross your mind. It's always like, well, just focus on like bullshit. Like you've had to think like anyone is going to talk about me in these restaurants. The Broncos are the number 1 team here is how I'm a bumbling village idiot. I mean, I'm their Tom Sula. And I went to UC Davis. I was studying to be a doctor. And because my dad, I became a football coach.
John, guess the line on Cardinals Patriots Monday Night Football.
I'm going to go pick them.
Cardinals +2.
It's a big game. The Patriots win that game. They're right back in the playoff mix, aren't they?
If the Patriots win that game, they are 7-6, which is the same record as the Jets. What's their head-to-head with the Jets? They beat them? Yeah.
Yeah,
twice.
So the Patriots destroyed them.
Yeah, so the Patriots, I guess it kind of depends on some tiebreakers. I think the Patriots would move into the playoffs if they win. Because, you know, if the Chargers win on Monday night, which we're watching that game right now, they'd be 7-6. So they'd have the same record. But right now, New England and the Chargers have the same record, and New England's ahead of them based on conference record. So actually, they'd be 5 and yeah, I think New England would stay ahead of Jacksonville. I think.
I don't know
New
why
England will move into the playoffs.
I'm getting so excited at sweet Justin Herbert plays. Like he makes sweet plays. Like
internet quarterback.
Every single human I know agrees like that Justin Herbert's better than Tua. Like I'm rooting against one guy who I think's a fucking idiot.
Chris Greer.
Who basically even acknowledged Emmanuel Acho acknowledged today it's all a bit like it's his Skip Bayless thing. I mean, basically, like I'm all in on the, you know, he's acknowledging what you and I would never tweet about some Raider game. I'm kidding.
That's right. John hates the Raiders, and I love them. John, I'm going to read this comment because I just think I don't know what's going on in the, you know, we try to keep an eye on the comments, but we're doing a show here, definitely for the podcast. The comments, you know, by and large, if they're not constructive, don't really help a podcast listener.
I turn them off because I lose focus.
I don't know what's happening in the comments, but I'll just read you this. I don't even know what it means. James in the comments, not talking to us, yelling at somebody else. I don't need to chill out. I see the comments. Everyone's acting like his mama when anyone says anything negative about him. Okay. Context clues. Just what do you think that's about? I don't know the answer. I assume somebody said something about Trey Lance, though.
Yeah, I mean,
that's my guess.
Probably, yeah. Who seems like he's handling pretty well on the sideline. Brock Purdy and Brian
do?
Greasy.
Just get ready for the battle. Just get ready for the quarterback competition. The
A
three-way
battle.
QB the four-way competition with him, Garoppolo, and Tom.
Maybe the competition for the backup because we all know who the
With
starter might be.
Garoppolo and Tom? Who's going to
Yeah.
be Purdy's backup?
Did Tom take veteran minimum deals?
Just to tutor Purdy? Oh, can I finish with there was one more thing I wanted to ask. Well, whatever. It's not worth putting on the podcast. There was a guy on the sidelines for the Niners with like 7 chains on. I just want to know who he is.
You look like Odell Beckham.
He was wearing like a. Can I get this up here? Will this work?
Did you see the story today about Odell Beckham?
No,
How
what was
no
the
one
story today?
Well, just no one thinks like he's not ready to play football. And then Odell even admitted on the shop, like, yeah, I don't really want to play in the regular season. I'll just be ready for the playoffs. Like, Odell, no one's going to sign you off an ACL injury. Just like, oh, yeah, just come in here. He's like, I'll work 6 to 6. But the regular season, I don't need to do that. I'll just be ready for the playoffs. Like, what? Like, that's not the way.
That's not how it works, and it's definitely not how it works off an ACL.
No, I wonder if he's saying some crazy shit in meetings with some of the guys.
So after the end of the Thursday night game on Amazon, I was just trying to wind down for the night.
What happened that night?
The Baker Mayfield beat the Raiders.
Oh yeah. Oh, that one. Yeah.
And I was like, I'm going to go back and watch the end of the game again. So that's the beauty of Amazon. You can just rewind. So I rewound and I watched it. And then when you hit the Amazon guide, it shows you all the different broadcasts. I'd forgotten that the shop was on that night. So I'm like, now for my encore, I'm going to go watch how the Spanish guys did it. And now I'm going to go watch how the shop. So I clicked the shop. LeBron wasn't there. Was he there at the beginning? When the game ended, LeBron was not there. I don't know if he was there at the beginning or if he had a game that night and wasn't there at all.
Yeah. What if they got a road trip or something?
All I know was LeBron wasn't there. It was like I don't know who it was.
Maverick, I'm sure. Rich Paul.
Well, yeah, it was Maverick and a couple other guys.
Like NFL guys or just like random?
Yeah, but I was like, where's LeBron? I just flipped this on for the shop and LeBron wasn't here.
Well, he can't guarantee every Thursday night, right?
No,
I mean, the NBA is in season.
He'd be like, Ham's going live. Hi, I'm Derek Papa. That's a deep inside joke.
Did you check out Dude Perfect's reaction?
No, I didn't see. Were they on? I didn't see the Dude
Perfect.
Perfect.
Well, they're on every week. I Dude Perfect.
I did not see the Dude Perfect, but I do like that about Amazon. That like right now, if I want to rewatch the Niner game, I either had to have recorded it, or that's it, right?
Yeah.
But the Amazon game, I just immediately went back and watched.
I'm telling you that all
drive 7 times.
Gen X, Stat X, or whatever that is.
Yeah.
I got, like I said on Thursday, I got stuck watching that, and just the watching everything play out was. I'm glad that I was forced to that broadcast to watch that
because you could just see the all-22 happen.
And as Baker Mayfield articulated on the booth with all the guys after the game, I couldn't believe they were in cover 0 and man-to-man on the outside.
Yeah.
And then Van Jefferson, whose dad is the Arizona. Think how cool that moment was for the dad for the Arizona Cardinals. You know, who's their wide receiver coach.
Mm-hmm.
You know, his son, he's the wide receiver coach. Like, that had to just be, and even he said, like, I hope my kid, remember when they played him? Yeah. I stopped watching after like the second episode, but he's like, I hope he goes for like 10 and 100 and we win. And then I think they lost. Oh, no, they did win that game. Cardinals and the Rams.
They won, but he scored a touchdown in the game is what happened.
Oh, that was it, yeah. Do you expect a Kyler Murray cliff blow up tomorrow? It's been pretty consistent throughout the year, so I don't know why we wouldn't get, especially with Bill throwing some curveballs.
All right. On that note, anything else?
What a day.
Thanks for hanging with us, everybody.
Hope Deebo's ankle's okay.
Yeah. We got a lot to talk about this week. We will be back, as always. Adios, Pelota.